There is a moment near the end of Return of the Jedi where Darth Vader stands in the Emperor's throne room and does nothing. His son is on the floor, lightning is pouring through Luke Skywalker's body, the boy is screaming, and Vader just stands there, helmet turned slightly, watching. The camera holds on that black mask and gives you nothing. No expression, no indication of what is happening inside. Just the sound of the respirator, steady as it has always been, and a father watching his child die. That is the image this entire story has been building toward. Not the lightsaber duels, not the Star Destroyers, not the lava or the politics or the prophecy. That moment, a man in a mask, deciding whether the thing he buried 20 years ago is still alive inside him. The story of Darth Vader is not really a story about evil. It is a story about fear. It is a story about a boy who loved too much and was told that love itself was dangerous, who reached for the one power that promised to let him keep the people he loved, and who lost every single one of them in the act of reaching. It is a story about how a good person becomes a monster, and whether the goodness survives underneath all that machinery. That is what we are going to talk about tonight. Every chapter, every turn, every scar, from the slave quarters of Tatooine to the throne room of the second Death Star, and everything that happened in between. Welcome to Twin Suns. Get comfortable, settle in, turn the lights down low. This one is going to take a while, and that is the point. And if you have not subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these long-form essays. Hit that button and let us get into it. The planet is called Tatooine, and it is the kind of place the galaxy forgets about on purpose. Twin suns, endless sand, a scattering of settlements that exist primarily to service the criminal enterprises of the Hutts. It is an outer rim world, which in the language of Star Wars means it is beyond the reach of the Republic, beyond the protection of the Jedi, beyond the concern of anyone who has the luxury of not living there. Slavery is legal, poverty is the default, and in the dusty slave quarter of Mos Espa, a boy named Anakin Skywalker is building a droid out of scrap parts because he wants his mother to have some help around the house. That detail matters. Think about it. He is 9 years old. He is a slave. He owns nothing. He has no rights, no freedom, no future that he can see from where he is standing. And his response to that situation is to build something for someone he loves, not for himself, for his mother, Shmi. That is who Anakin Skywalker is before anyone tells him he is special, before the prophecy, before the Jedi, before any of it. He is a child whose first instinct, in the face of powerlessness, is generosity. Shmi Skywalker's story is itself a study in quiet endurance. She was captured by pirates as a child alongside her parents and sold into slavery. She passed through several owners before ending up as the property of a Toydarian junk dealer named Watto, who won her and Anakin in a bet against Gardulla the Hutt. In spite of everything, Shmi built a home. She raised her son with kindness, with patience, with a kind of fierce maternal love that the galaxy had given her no reason to believe in. And when Qui-Gon Jinn asks her about Anakin's father, she says something that changes the trajectory of the entire saga. There was no father. She carried him. She gave birth to him. She raised him. But there was no father. The implications of that statement ripple through everything that follows. Qui-Gon Jinn, the maverick Jedi Master who has landed on Tatooine by accident while escorting Queen Amidala of Naboo, immediately recognizes what this might mean. He tests the boy's blood. Anakin's midi-chlorian count is higher than any Jedi on record, including Master Yoda. Qui-Gon becomes convinced that this child is the chosen one of Jedi prophecy, the being who will bring balance to the Force. That is a heavy thing to place on the shoulders of a 9-year-old slave, but Qui-Gon does not hesitate. He sees something in this boy that he trusts more than the caution of the Jedi Council. Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, released on May 19, 1999, introduces us to Anakin in a way that is deliberately, almost painfully, ordinary. He is small, he is enthusiastic, he talks too much. He shows Padme, a handmaiden traveling with the Queen, his room full of projects and half-finished machines. He tells her about pod racing, about the speeds, about the danger, with the breathless excitement of a child who has found the one arena where his extraordinary gifts actually matter. And then the film does something quietly devastating. It lets you see the moment he learns he might be free. Qui-Gon arranges a bet with Watto. If Anakin wins the Boonta Eve Classic pod race, the boy goes free. Watto agrees because he cannot imagine losing. No human has ever won a pod race. The speeds exceed 700 kilometers per hour. The other racers are ruthless, particularly a Dug named Sebulba, who has a reputation for sabotaging competitors mid-race. The odds against Anakin are, by any rational measure, impossible. And Anakin wins. He wins because he is gifted in a way that nobody around him fully understands yet. He can see things before they happen, can react to dangers before they materialize, can navigate a machine through terrain that would kill any other human pilot. He crosses the finish line and becomes the first human ever to win the Boonta Eve Classic. And in doing so, he earns his freedom. But not his mother's freedom. That is the detail that cuts. Qui-Gon tried. He attempted to free both of them, but Watto would not agree to lose both his slaves in a single wager. And so Anakin, at 9 years old, is faced with a choice that no child should ever have to make. He can stay a slave with his mother, or he can leave her behind and follow this Jedi into a life he cannot yet imagine. There is a scene where Anakin runs back to say goodbye. Shmi kneels down and holds him and tells him not to look back. She tells him to be brave, and Anakin says he cannot do it. He cannot leave her. And Shmi, with a steadiness that hides how much she is breaking, tells him that this is the path his life is supposed to take. She lets him go. Think about what that costs her. Think about what it costs him. Every single thing that Darth Vader will become, every act of cruelty, every moment of rage, every desperate grasp at power, all of it grows from this root. A boy who was torn from his mother and told it was destiny. A boy who learned, at 9, that love means leaving, that the people you care about most are the ones you cannot protect. Qui-Gon brings Anakin to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and what happens there is one of the most important scenes in the entire saga, though it does not look like much at the time. The Jedi Council evaluates the boy. Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, the collected wisdom of the Jedi Order at its peak. They test him, they question him, and they sense something that troubles them deeply. Fear. Anakin is afraid. Yoda says it plainly. He senses much fear in the boy. And Anakin, with the honesty of a child who does not yet know how to hide what he feels, tells them what he is afraid of. He misses his mother. He is in a strange place, surrounded by strangers, and he misses her. That is all. That is the source of the fear that the Jedi Council identifies as a disqualifying flaw. A child misses his mother, and the most powerful Force users in the galaxy look at that and see a problem. This needs to be stated plainly. The Jedi Council's response to a frightened child is to tell him that his fear is dangerous, not to comfort him, not to help him process the trauma of being separated from the only person who has ever loved him. They diagnose him. They warn Qui-Gon that the boy is too old, that his attachments are too strong, that training him is a risk. And when Qui-Gon pushes back, insisting that Anakin is the chosen one, they relent only grudgingly. Not because they believe in the boy, because they cannot quite bring themselves to reject the prophecy. This is not a small thing. The Jedi Order's institutional response to Anakin Skywalker's emotional needs, from this very first moment, is suppression rather than support. They do not teach him how to love safely. They teach him that love is a liability. They do not help him grieve his mother. They tell him to let go. And then they are surprised, years later, when the grief he was never allowed to process erupts into something uncontrollable. But before any of that plays out, the immediate crisis of the Phantom Menace reaches its climax. On Naboo, while the young Queen Amidala leads a strike against the Trade Federation's occupation, Qui-Gon Jinn faces the Sith Lord Darth Maul in a lightsaber duel inside the Theed power generator. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon's Padawan, is separated from his master by a series of energy barriers. He can see the fight, he cannot reach it. And Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon Jinn. That is the first major death in Anakin's story, and it sets a pattern that will repeat for the next 2 decades. The people who care about Anakin, the people who see him clearly, the people who might have guided him differently, they are the ones who die or leave. Qui-Gon was the Jedi who believed in Anakin without reservation. He was the one who would have trained him not with the Order's institutional detachment, but with genuine warmth, genuine faith, and he is gone before the training even begins. Obi-Wan Kenobi, grief-stricken and newly elevated to the rank of Jedi Knight, takes Anakin as his Padawan, not because the Council chose him, because he promised Qui-Gon he would. Think about the foundation that creates. Obi-Wan is a young man, barely past apprenticeship himself, who has just watched his master die. He takes on the training of a boy the Council did not want, out of loyalty to a dead man. He loves Anakin. That will become clear over the years that follow. But he is not Qui-Gon. He is more cautious, more bound by the rules, more likely to correct than to encourage. And Anakin, who needed a father, gets a brother who is still figuring out how to be a brother. Meanwhile, on Naboo, the battle concludes. Young Anakin, who has accidentally ended up in a Naboo starfighter, destroys the Trade Federation droid control ship from the inside, shutting down the entire droid army on the planet's surface. He is 9 years old. He has freed a planet, and he does not fully understand what he has done. He climbs out of the cockpit with wide eyes and says a variation of the word whoops, and the people around him cheer, and Obi-Wan watches with a mix of pride and apprehension, because the boy has just demonstrated power on a scale that should not be possible at his age. The Phantom Menace ends with a celebration on Naboo and a funeral for Qui-Gon Jinn. At the funeral pyre, Obi-Wan stands beside his fallen master's body and makes the promise that will define his life. He will train the boy. He will see Qui-Gon's last wish fulfilled. Yoda, standing beside him, warns that the training will be dangerous. The dark side surrounds Anakin's future, but Obi-Wan is resolute, and Mace Windu and Yoda exchange a quiet conversation about the return of the Sith, about the fact that there are always two, a master and an apprentice, and they wonder which was destroyed on Naboo, the master or the apprentice. The question hangs in the air, unanswered, and will not be resolved for another decade. And during those same years, something else begins, something quieter than Jedi training, quieter than lightsaber forms and Force exercises, but ultimately far more consequential. Chancellor Palpatine takes an interest in the boy. He invites Anakin to his office. He asks about his training. He listens. That last part is critical. In a world where the Jedi tell Anakin what to feel and what not to feel, Palpatine simply listens. He validates. He sympathizes. He tells Anakin that he is special, that the Jedi do not appreciate his gifts, that the boy's frustrations are not weaknesses, but signs of a greatness the Council is too rigid to recognize. The grooming begins at 9 years old, and it is so gradual, so patient, so perfectly calibrated to Anakin's specific vulnerabilities, that neither Anakin nor the Jedi ever see it for what it is. Palpatine does not make a single overt move during those 10 years of Anakin's apprenticeship. He does not need to. He is playing a game measured in decades, and his strategy with Anakin is the same strategy he uses with the Republic itself. Become indispensable, become trusted, become the one person whose counsel feels honest in a world full of politics and evasion. By the time Anakin is a young man, Palpatine is more than a political figure to him. He is a mentor, a confidant, the closest thing to a father Anakin has ever had. And that relationship, that carefully constructed dependency, is the weapon that will ultimately destroy the Jedi Order. The genius of Palpatine's approach is that he never asks Anakin to do anything wrong during these formative years. He does not invite the boy to explore the dark side. He does not whisper about Sith teachings. He simply provides an emotional outlet that the Jedi have denied him. He asks about his feelings. He validates his frustrations. He tells him stories about the galaxy, about politics, about the way power really works beneath the surface of institutions and codes and rules. He makes Anakin feel seen, and for a child who has been told by the Jedi to stop feeling, being seen is intoxicating. The Jedi do not intervene. They do not question why the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic is spending private time with their most powerful Padawan. They do not recognize the pattern because they are too consumed by their own institutional concerns, too focused on the growing political instability, too confident in their ability to read the Force. The Jedi Order, at the height of its power, is also at the height of its blindness. And the blindness is not accidental. It is the direct consequence of an institution that has prioritized detachment over connection, that has spent 1,000 years teaching its members to suppress emotion rather than understand it. An institution like that cannot recognize emotional manipulation because it has never taken emotions seriously enough to study how they work. 10 years pass between The Phantom Menace and Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, which was released on May 16, 2002. And when we meet Anakin again, he is 19 years old, and the cracks are already showing. The boy who built a droid for his mother has become a young man consumed by dreams of his mother suffering. He has not seen Shmi in a decade. The Jedi Order, in its wisdom, has not allowed him to go back, and the dreams are getting worse. Not vague anxieties, vivid, visceral images of pain, of Shmi calling out for him, of something terrible happening to her, right now, while he sits in a temple on Coruscant and meditates on letting go. But before he can act on those dreams, he is given an assignment that changes everything in a different way. He and Obi-Wan are tasked with protecting Senator Padme Amidala, the former Queen of Naboo, after an assassination attempt. And here is where the story becomes something more than a tale of a Jedi's fall. Because Anakin Skywalker falls in love. He has been in love with Padme since he was 9. That is established in The Phantom Menace, played as a child's crush, charming and harmless. But now he is 19, and she is standing in front of him, and the feeling has not faded. It has deepened into something that the Jedi Code explicitly forbids. Attachment, possession, the desire to be with one person above all others and to never, ever let them go. The Jedi Code is clear on this point. A Jedi shall not know anger, nor hatred, nor love. Attachment leads to jealousy. Jealousy leads to fear of loss. Fear of loss leads to the dark side. The logic is clean, and it is monstrous. It asks human beings, taken from their families as infants, trained in emotional suppression from childhood, to simply not feel the most fundamental human emotion. And when one of them does feel it, the institution's response is not guidance, but prohibition. Do not love. And if you do, hide it, because if the Order finds out, you are finished. Anakin and Padme fall in love on Naboo, in a sequence that the film frames as romantic, but that carries undercurrents of desperation on Anakin's part that become clearer with every rewatch. He does not know how to love normally. He has never seen a healthy relationship modeled. He has been told that what he feels is wrong, and so every expression of that feeling carries a charge of defiance, of secrecy, of the forbidden. When Padme resists, not because she does not feel the same, but because she understands the consequences, Anakin pushes. He declares his love in absolute terms. He says he is haunted by the kiss she should never have given him. The language of obsession is already woven into the language of romance, and neither of them can see it. But it is what happens on Tatooine that reveals where Anakin's story is truly headed. He goes back, against orders, driven by dreams that have become unbearable. He returns to Tatooine to find his mother. He learns from Watto that Shmi was freed years ago and married a moisture farmer named Klieg Lars. He goes to the Lars homestead and finds Klieg in a hover chair, his leg lost to the same creatures who took Shmi. Tusken Raiders. They kidnapped her a month ago. Klieg sent a search party. Most of them did not come back. He tells Anakin that his mother is dead, that there is no point in going after her. Anakin goes anyway. He takes a speeder bike into the desert at night and finds the Tusken camp. And he finds his mother. She is in a tent, bound, beaten. Her face is cut and swollen, her body thin from starvation. She has been enduring this for a month. Anakin cuts her free and holds her, and she opens her eyes. And for one moment, she sees her son. She says his name. She tells him she is complete, now that she has seen him again, and then she dies in his arms. Let that sit for a moment. Everything he was afraid of has come true. Every dream, every premonition, every middle-of-the-night terror that the Jedi told him to meditate away. It was all real. His mother was suffering, and he was sitting in a temple learning to suppress his emotions, and she died because he did not come sooner. That is the story Anakin tells himself in that tent. Whether it is fair, whether it is accurate, does not matter. That is what he believes, and belief is what drives action. What Anakin does next is the first act of what will eventually become Darth Vader. He ignites his lightsaber, and he kills every Tusken Raider in the camp. Not just the warriors, the women, the children, everyone. The film does not show the massacre directly. It does not need to. It cuts away to Yoda, in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, meditating. And Yoda hears something through the Force. He hears Qui-Gon's voice, calling out, warning, screaming Anakin's name. The dead cry out when the living commit atrocities of sufficient magnitude, and what Anakin is doing in that camp is loud enough to reach across the galaxy. He slaughters them with the systematic thoroughness of someone who is not fighting but punishing. This is not combat. This is extermination. And the distinction matters because it will recur. The same methodical violence, the same absolute disregard for surrender or mercy, will define Darth Vader's approach to the Jedi Purge, to the suppression of rebel cells, to every act of violence he commits for the next 2 decades. The pattern begins here, in a tent on Tatooine, with his mother's body growing cold behind him. Afterward, he brings his mother's body home and confesses to Padme what he has done. The confession scene is one of the most important in the prequel trilogy. Anakin does not try to justify what he did. He rages, he weeps, he says they were like animals, and he slaughtered them like animals. He hates them. He hates himself for not being powerful enough to save his mother. And then he says something that should terrify anyone who is paying attention. He says that someday he will be the most powerful Jedi ever. He will even learn to stop people from dying. That is the seed, right there. Not the killing, though that is horrifying enough. The vow, the promise to himself that he will find a way to cheat death, to hold on to the people he loves, to never again stand in a tent and watch someone die because he was not strong enough to prevent it. That is the engine that drives the rest of this story. That is the need that Palpatine will exploit. That is the crack in the foundation that brings the whole structure down. The performance Hayden Christensen gives in this scene has been debated for over 2 decades, often unfairly. Critics have called the delivery wooden, over-the-top, uneven, but consider what the scene is actually depicting. A traumatized young man, barely 20, who has just committed mass murder and is incapable of processing what he has done. The awkwardness of the delivery, the way Anakin oscillates between rage and grief, between self-pity and self-loathing, between childlike vulnerability and terrifying fury, is not a failure of performance. It is the sound of a person breaking. People who are breaking do not speak in polished monologues. They lash out. They contradict themselves. They say things that do not make sense because the thing that is happening to them does not make sense. Christensen's Anakin sounds like someone who has never been taught how to express what he feels. Because he has not. The Jedi raised him to suppress his emotions, and now that the suppression has failed, the emotions come out jagged and raw and wrong. Padme's response to this confession is itself worth examining. She comforts him, she holds him, she does not recoil. She does not report him to the Jedi. She loves him, and in loving him, she becomes complicit in his silence. The massacre of the Tusken camp is never reported, never investigated, never addressed by the Jedi Order. Anakin buries it. It does not stay buried. Before the film reaches its conclusion, there is another sequence on Geonosis that adds a crucial piece to the architecture of Anakin's fall. Anakin and Padme rush to Geonosis to rescue Obi-Wan, who has been captured by Count Dooku and the Separatist leadership. They are captured themselves, and all 3 are sentenced to death in a gladiatorial arena, chained to pillars and set upon by enormous creatures, while thousands of Geonosians watch from the stands. The arena sequence is important, not for its action, though the action is considerable, but for what it reveals about Anakin's fighting style and temperament. He does not defend, he attacks. He does not wait for openings. He creates them through aggression. When the Jedi arrive to rescue them, a full strike team of over 200 Jedi, the battle that follows is the largest display of Jedi power in the entire saga, and it ends in slaughter. The droids are too many. The Jedi are surrounded. They are saved only by the last-minute arrival of Yoda with the newly commissioned clone army, the army that Palpatine has been secretly arranging for years. In the chaos that follows, Anakin and Obi-Wan pursue Count Dooku to a hangar on the outskirts of the Geonosian complex. The duel with Dooku is brief and humiliating. Dooku is a master swordsman, a former Jedi who trained under Yoda himself, and he dismantles both Anakin and Obi-Wan with elegant precision. He wounds Obi-Wan with cuts to his arm and leg, and then he turns to Anakin and, in a single stroke, severs Anakin's right arm just above the elbow. That injury, that specific injury, echoes forward through the entire saga. Anakin loses his arm to a Sith Lord. Luke will lose his hand to Vader. Vader will lose his hand to Luke. The Skywalker family communicates its deepest conflicts through severed limbs, a pattern so consistent that it cannot be accidental. George Lucas has spoken about the rhyming quality of Star Wars, the way events repeat across generations. The loss of Anakin's arm is the first rhyme, the first physical manifestation of a wound that will be inherited, passed down, repeated. Dooku escapes. Yoda arrives and duels him briefly, but Dooku brings down a pillar that would crush Anakin and Obi-Wan, forcing Yoda to choose between pursuit and protection. He chooses protection. Dooku flees to Coruscant and reports to his master, Darth Sidious, who is, of course, Palpatine. The war has begun. Everything is proceeding as Sidious has foreseen. Attack of the Clones ends with two things happening simultaneously that seal Anakin's trajectory. On Geonosis, the Clone Wars begin, a massive conflict between the Republic and the Separatist Alliance, orchestrated from both sides by Darth Sidious, who is also Chancellor Palpatine, though nobody except the audience knows that yet. And on Naboo, in secret, Anakin and Padme are married, a Jedi who has committed mass murder, and a senator who has helped him conceal it, binding themselves together in a ceremony that violates the most fundamental rule of his order. That is the state of Anakin Skywalker as the Clone Wars begin. A Jedi Knight with a secret wife, a buried atrocity, a dead mother he could not save, and a desperate need for power that he frames as love. He is not a villain yet. He is something more complicated and more dangerous. He is a good man with all the wrong tools for dealing with his pain. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Clone Wars last 3 years in the Star Wars timeline, and for most of that time, our primary window into Anakin Skywalker's evolution is not the films, but the animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which premiered in 2008 and ran for 7 seasons, with its final season airing in 2020 on Disney+. What the series does, over the course of more than 100 episodes, is take the sketch of Anakin that the prequel films provide and turn it into one of the most fully realized character studies in the Star Wars canon. In the films, Anakin's fall can feel abrupt. He goes from conflicted Jedi to child murderer in what seems like a single afternoon. The Clone Wars fills in that gap with years of accumulated damage, showing you every crack as it forms, every betrayal as it lands, every moment where the Jedi Order's failures and Palpatine's manipulation push Anakin one step closer to the edge. By the time Revenge of the Sith arrives, if you have watched the animated series, the fall does not feel sudden at all. It feels inevitable. The series gives Anakin something the films never did: a Padawan. Her name is Ahsoka Tano, and she is assigned to him by Master Yoda at the start of the Clone Wars. Anakin does not want an apprentice. He is barely past apprenticeship himself, and he is not the kind of person who follows the rules closely enough to teach them to someone else. But Ahsoka is stubborn, resourceful, and brave in a way that mirrors Anakin's own recklessness. And despite his initial resistance, he comes to care about her more than he cares about almost anyone else in his life. The relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka is, in many ways, the emotional spine of the Clone Wars series. She calls him Sky Guy. He calls her Snips. The nicknames are affectionate, and they mask something deeper. Anakin, who never had a real father, who lost Qui-Gon before the man could truly become his mentor, who relates to Obi-Wan more as a brother than as a teacher, pours into Ahsoka all the protective devotion he has been accumulating his entire life. She is his student, his responsibility, his family. And the more he loves her, the more vulnerable he becomes. Because the one thing Anakin Skywalker cannot survive is losing another person he loves. There is a story arc in Season 3 of The Clone Wars that reveals more about Anakin's destiny than almost anything in the films. It is called the Mortis arc, spanning 3 episodes. Overlords, Altar of Mortis, and Ghosts of Mortis, which aired in late January and early February of 2011. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are drawn to a mysterious planet called Mortis, a realm that exists outside normal space, where the Force itself is personified by 3 beings: the Father, who maintains balance; the Daughter, who embodies the light side; and the Son, who embodies the dark. The Father has been keeping the Son and the Daughter in equilibrium for millennia, but he is dying, and he needs a successor. He believes Anakin is that successor, the chosen one, the only being powerful enough to hold the balance between light and dark. What makes the Mortis arc so significant is not the cosmic mythology, though that is striking enough. It is what happens when the Son shows Anakin a vision of his future. In Ghosts of Mortis, the Son takes Anakin and reveals to him everything he will become: the fall, the suit, the destruction, the Emperor, all of it. And Anakin, seeing the horror of what awaits him, briefly turns to the dark side. He allies with the sun. He becomes, for a few moments, a version of Darth Vader. The Father intervenes. He erases Anakin's memory of the vision. The knowledge is taken away, and Anakin returns to himself, unaware of what he saw. But the audience knows. The audience has watched Anakin see his own future and choose darkness in response to it, not because the darkness appealed to him, but because he thought he could use it to prevent the suffering he saw coming. The same logic, the same trap, the belief that enough power can protect the people you love, even when the power itself is what destroys them. There is another dimension to the Mortis arc that is worth sitting with. When the Father erases Anakin's memory at the end of Ghosts of Mortis, he is doing something that the Jedi Council has been doing to Anakin his entire life. He is deciding that Anakin cannot handle the truth. He is making a choice about what Anakin is allowed to know, about what information is too dangerous for him to possess, without asking Anakin's permission. The Father does it out of love and necessity. The Jedi Council does it out of institutional reflex. But the effect is the same. Anakin is surrounded by people who decide what he can and cannot know, and every time the truth eventually reaches him, it arrives as a betrayal. The Clone Wars deepens Anakin's relationship with his clone troopers in a way that the films never had time to explore. Anakin treats his soldiers as people, not as expendable assets, not as biological weapons, but as individuals with names and personalities and value. Captain Rex, the commander of the 501st Legion, becomes one of Anakin's closest companions. Their bond is genuine, mutual, and built on shared combat experience. Rex follows Anakin into situations that any sane officer would avoid, and Anakin fights for Rex's survival with the same ferocity he brings to protecting Ahsoka. This matters because of what happens later. The clones who march beside Anakin, who trust him with their lives and whom he trusts with his, are the same clones who will carry out Order 66. The same soldiers who fight at his side during the war will turn their weapons on every other Jedi in the galaxy. The tragedy of the clones, soldiers who were bred for war and then robbed of their free will by implanted chips, is a shadow version of Anakin's own tragedy. They too are victims of Palpatine's design. They too will be turned into weapons against the people they serve. And they have even less choice in the matter than Anakin does. The war itself changes Anakin in ways that are subtle but cumulative. He fights on Christophsis, on Ryloth, on Umbara, on dozens of worlds where the violence is constant and the stakes are absolute. He becomes a brilliant tactician, a fearless pilot, a warrior whose reputation grows with every campaign. The HoloNet calls him the hero with no fear, but that title is a lie, and the Clone Wars shows you why. Anakin is full of fear. He is afraid of losing Padme. He is afraid of losing Ahsoka. He is afraid of losing Rex and his men. He is afraid of the dreams that plague him. He channels all of that fear into aggression, into action, into the relentless forward motion of combat, because as long as he is fighting, he does not have to sit with what he feels. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from years of uninterrupted warfare, and the Clone Wars does not shy away from depicting it. Anakin does not have the luxury of processing his traumas between battles. There is no therapist. There is no leave. There is only the next mission, the next crisis, the next planetary siege. And the Jedi Council, which is supposed to be the spiritual authority guiding these warrior monks, is just as consumed by the war as the soldiers are. The contemplative order that once meditated on the mysteries of the Force has become a military command structure, and the transformation has hollowed it out from the inside. The Clone Wars also explores Anakin's relationship with the institution that raised him, and it does so with a precision that makes the Jedi Order's failures feel specific and personal rather than abstract. There is an arc in Season 4 where Obi-Wan fakes his own death as part of an undercover mission to infiltrate a plot against Chancellor Palpatine. The Jedi Council knows about the deception. They are the ones who planned it, but they choose not to tell Anakin. Think about what that means. Anakin believes his best friend, his brother, the person who raised him, is dead. He grieves, he rages, he lashes out at the Council for not doing more. And the whole time, Obi-Wan is alive, and the Council knows it, and they have decided that Anakin's feelings are less important than operational security. When the truth comes out, Anakin is furious, not just at the deception, at the discovery that the people he serves, the institution he has given his life to, will lie to him about the death of the person closest to him without a moment's hesitation. That betrayal is quiet, institutional, and devastating. It teaches Anakin something that Palpatine has been whispering to him for years. The Jedi do not trust you. They do not value your feelings. They will use you when it serves them and discard you when it does not. And the worst part is that, in this case, Palpatine is not entirely wrong. Season 4 also takes Anakin to Zygoria, a world built on the slave trade. This arc, running across 3 episodes, sends Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka undercover to infiltrate a slaving operation. For Anakin, a former slave, this is not just a mission. It is personal, in a way that goes deeper than strategy. The show does not flinch from this. It shows Anakin's rage building, his self-control fraying, his willingness to cross lines that other Jedi would not approach. The slavers are not abstractions to him. They are the faces of every person who ever owned him, every person who owned his mother, every system that treated human beings as property. And when he fights them, there is a violence in his movements that has nothing to do with Jedi restraint and everything to do with a wound that has never healed. But the arc that ultimately matters most, the one that delivers the final blow to Anakin's faith in the Jedi Order, comes in Season 5. Ahsoka Tano is framed for a bombing at the Jedi Temple. The evidence against her is circumstantial but damning, and the Jedi Council, rather than defending one of their own, expels her from the Order and hands her over to the Republic military for trial. Anakin is the only one who fights for her. He is the only one who investigates, who searches for the real bomber, who refuses to accept that Ahsoka could be guilty, and he finds the truth. Another Padawan, Barriss Offee, committed the bombing as a protest against the Jedi's role in the war. Ahsoka is exonerated. But the damage is done. The Council invites Ahsoka back. They frame her ordeal as a trial, as the will of the Force, as something that has made her stronger. And Ahsoka looks at them, at these masters who abandoned her when she needed them most, and she says no. She will not come back. She walks away from the Jedi Order, down the steps of the temple, and Anakin follows her to the threshold and watches her go. The episode is called The Wrong Jedi. It aired on March 2nd, 2013, as the finale of Season 5. And it is, in many ways, the moment where Anakin Skywalker's fate is sealed. He has now lost his mother. He has watched the Jedi betray him and lie to him, and now they have taken his Padawan, the person he poured his heart into protecting, and driven her away. When Ahsoka walks down those steps, she takes with her the last thread connecting Anakin to the belief that the Jedi Order is worthy of his loyalty. Think about the accumulation of loss. His mother, dead because he was not allowed to go to her. His mentor Qui-gon, dead before the training could begin. His trust in the Council, broken by deception and institutional cowardice. His Padawan, gone because the Order would rather sacrifice one of its own than admit it might be wrong. And through all of it, one person has been consistent, sympathetic, and present. Chancellor Palpatine, the one authority figure who has never let Anakin down, never judged him, never told him his feelings are a weakness. The man who has been grooming him since he was 9 years old. Season 6 of The Clone Wars adds another layer. There is an arc involving the Clone Trooper 5s, who discovers the existence of inhibitor chips implanted in every clone soldier. These chips, when activated, will override the clone's free will and compel them to execute Order 66, the command to kill all Jedi. Fives tries to warn the Republic. He tries to reach Anakin, but Palpatine's agents intercept him, frame him as unstable, and he is killed before the truth can come out. The audience watches the safety net dissolve. The one chance to prevent the genocide of the Jedi is lost, and nobody knows it except the Chancellor who planned it all. The final season of The Clone Wars, Season 7, which aired from February to May of 2020, ends with an arc that runs parallel to the events of Revenge of the Sith. The Siege of Mandalore is 4 episodes long, and it is, by any reasonable measure, the best Star Wars storytelling ever produced for television. It puts Ahsoka and Captain Rex at the center of a battle for Mandalore, while, on Coruscant, Anakin is falling. Before the siege begins, there is a scene between Anakin and Ahsoka that carries an almost unbearable weight of dramatic irony. Anakin gives Ahsoka her lightsabers back. He has repaired them, modified them, improved them. The blades are now blue instead of green. It is a gift, a gesture of love from a master to the student who left him. Ahsoka takes them and looks at Anakin, and there is something in her face that might be a premonition, a sense that she is seeing him for the last time. She does not say it, neither does he. They part, and Ahsoka goes to Mandalore, and Anakin goes to rescue the Chancellor, and neither of them knows that they will never see each other again, not as themselves. The next time they meet, he will be Vader. The show intercuts between Ahsoka's fight and Anakin's betrayal with devastating precision. In one scene, Ahsoka is dueling Maul, who has seen the future and is trying desperately to warn anyone who will listen that Anakin Skywalker is about to destroy everything. Maul tells Ahsoka that Sidious has groomed Anakin to be his new apprentice, that the Jedi are about to be destroyed, that the war has been a lie from the beginning. Ahsoka does not believe him. She cannot believe him. The idea that Anakin, her Anakin, the person who fought for her, who taught her, who never gave up on her, could become the instrument of the Jedi's destruction is simply inconceivable to her. She refuses Maul's offer to join forces against Sidious, and in doing so, she seals the fate she was trying to prevent. In the next scene, Anakin is standing in Palpatine's office, making the choice that will prove Maul right. When Order 66 activates, Ahsoka is aboard a Republic cruiser with Rex and a company of clone troopers. The clones turn on her instantly. Rex, whose inhibitor chip fights against his programming for one desperate moment, manages to warn Ahsoka before the chip takes full control. He tells her to find Fives, to find the truth about the chips, and then Rex aims his weapons at her and fires. Ahsoka removes Rex's chip through emergency surgery while fending off the entire ship's complement of clones. She saves Rex. Together, they crash the cruiser and fake their deaths. And the final scene of the Clone Wars is Ahsoka standing in the snow, surrounded by clone trooper helmets she has planted in the ground as grave markers for the soldiers who died following orders they could not refuse. She drops her lightsaber in the snow, and a time skip reveals Vader, years later, standing in the same spot, finding that lightsaber, holding it up to the light of a dying sun. The last connection between master and student, the last physical evidence that Ahsoka Tano existed, and Vader holds it in his gloved hand and walks away, and the Clone Wars ends. If this deep dive is keeping you company tonight, subscribing is one of the best ways to support what we do here. Now we come to Revenge of the Sith, released on May 19, 2005, and the story accelerates. Everything that has been building for a decade, in the films and in the animated series, converges in a single story that takes Anakin Skywalker apart piece by piece and reassembles him as something unrecognizable. The film opens with Anakin and Obi-Wan on a rescue mission. Chancellor Palpatine has been captured by General Grievous, and the two Jedi fight their way through a separatist fleet to reach him. They find Palpatine in the command tower of Grievous's flagship, guarded by Count Dooku, the Sith Lord who has been leading the separatist cause. The opening battle above Coruscant is the largest space battle in Star Wars history to that point. Hundreds of capital ships locked in combat, swarms of fighters weaving between them, explosions blooming silently in the void. Anakin and Obi-Wan fly through the chaos in their Jedi interceptors, and their banter is easy, practiced, affectionate. This is the Anakin the Clone Wars built, confident, funny, brilliant. He and Obi-Wan move through the battle like a team that has been working together for years, because they have. They finish each other's tactical thoughts. They cover each other's flanks. When Obi-Wan's ship is swarmed by buzz droids, tiny sabotage units that tear at his hull, Anakin swoops in and blasts them off with a precision shot that should be impossible at combat speed. He grins. Obi-Wan scolds him. It is, for a few minutes, the relationship as it was always meant to be. Two brothers, doing what they do best, saving each other. That makes what follows so much worse, because this is the last time Anakin and Obi-Wan will fight on the same side. They reach the flagship and fight their way to the observation deck where Palpatine is being held, and the duel with Dooku is where the first domino falls. Anakin fights with a ferocity that surprises even Obi-Wan. He disarms Dooku, literally, severing both his hands. And then, with Dooku on his knees, defenseless, Palpatine tells Anakin to kill him. "Do it," he says. Just like that, 2 words. Anakin hesitates. He knows this is wrong. A Jedi does not execute an unarmed prisoner. But Dooku tried to kill him. Dooku cut off his arm in their last encounter. And Palpatine, the Chancellor, the man Anakin trusts, is telling him to do it. So he does. He crosses Dooku's own lightsabers and takes his head. That moment is the template for everything that follows. An act of violence that Anakin knows is wrong, committed because someone he trusts tells him it is necessary. The execution of Dooku is not the act of a Sith. It is the act of a man who has been conditioned, over years, to override his own moral judgment in favor of an authority figure's instruction. And the authority figure who has been doing the conditioning is the same one who is now telling him to kill. Back on Coruscant, Anakin learns that Padme is pregnant, and almost immediately, the dreams begin. The same kind of dreams he had about his mother. Vivid, suffocating visions of Padme dying in childbirth, screaming his name, reaching for him as the life leaves her body. The dreams that came true about Shmi, the dreams he failed to act on in time. They are happening again, and this time, the person he is going to lose is not his mother. It is his wife, the one person left in the galaxy that he cannot bear to live without. This is the trap. This is the mechanism of Anakin's destruction, and it is exquisitely cruel because it uses his greatest strength, his capacity for love, as the weapon that destroys him. Anakin does not turn to the dark side because he wants power. He does not turn because he is ambitious, or cruel, or seduced by evil for its own sake. He turns because he is terrified of loss, because he has already survived the loss of his mother and knows he cannot survive it again, and because someone offers him a way out. The Council makes a decision about Anakin that seems minor, but is, in context, devastating. Palpatine appoints Anakin as his personal representative on the Jedi Council, a political maneuver designed to give Palpatine eyes and ears in the Order's most private deliberations. The Council accepts the appointment because they have no choice, but they deny Anakin the rank of Jedi Master. He is on the Council, but he is not a Master. The distinction is institutional and petty, and, to Anakin, deeply personal. Every other member of the Council holds the rank of Master. Anakin, the Chosen One, the hero with no fear, the most powerful Jedi of his generation, is told that he is not good enough, that he has not earned it, that his appointment is political, not meritorious, and the Council wants to make sure he knows it. The rank matters to Anakin for reasons beyond ego, though ego is certainly part of it. The Jedi archives contain restricted sections accessible only to Masters. If the knowledge of how to prevent death exists anywhere in the Jedi records, Anakin needs Master-level access to find it. The denial of rank is, from Anakin's perspective, the Council actively preventing him from saving Padme's life. They do not know this is his motivation, of course. They see a young Jedi with too much pride and not enough patience, but the effect is the same. Another wall between Anakin and the help he needs. Another reason to believe that the Jedi are not his allies. And then the Council makes another catastrophic mistake with Anakin. They ask him to spy on Chancellor Palpatine. They know that Palpatine has been accumulating emergency powers throughout the war, that he has held office far longer than his term allows, that his influence over the military and the Senate has grown beyond what any elected leader should possess. They suspect, though they cannot prove, that something darker is at play. And so they go to Anakin, the person closest to Palpatine, and they ask him to report on his friend, his mentor, the man who has been more of a father to him than any Jedi Master. The request is a violation of everything Anakin values. It asks him to betray a personal relationship in service of an institutional agenda. It asks him to be a spy, and it comes from the same council that denied him the rank of Master, the same council that lied to him about Obi-Wan's death, the same council that expelled Ahsoka and offered only a hollow apology when they were proven wrong. Anakin agrees to do it because he is still, at this point, trying to be a good Jedi. But the agreement costs him something. Another piece of the trust he once placed in the Order breaks off and falls away. Palpatine senses the opening. He has been waiting for this moment, engineering it across decades of patient manipulation, and he plays it perfectly. Palpatine reveals himself. In a scene at the galaxy's opera house on Coruscant, he tells Anakin the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith Lord who discovered how to use the Force to prevent the people he cared about from dying. The story is presented as a legend, a parable, but the implication is unmistakable. The dark side has the power to cheat death. The Jedi do not. If Anakin wants to save Padme, there is only one path. The opera scene is one of the best directed scenes in the prequel trilogy, and its power comes from what it does not say. Palpatine never directly offers Anakin the dark side. He never says, "Become my apprentice and I will teach you to save Padme." He simply tells a story and lets Anakin draw his own conclusions. The manipulation is surgical. Every word is chosen to appeal to Anakin's specific fears, Anakin's specific needs, Anakin's specific history of loss. Palpatine knows about Shmi. He knows about the nightmares. He may even know about the marriage, though the extent of his knowledge is never made fully explicit. What matters is that he knows exactly which buttons to press, and he presses them with the patience of someone who has been planning this conversation for 13 years. Anakin asks him if it is possible to learn the power Plagueis possessed, and Palpatine says, "Not from a Jedi." Those 4 words are the hinge on which the entire saga turns. They frame the choice as binary, Jedi or Sith, the light side, which cannot save Padme, or the dark side, which can. There is no third option. There is no nuance. And Anakin, who has never been good at nuance, who has always thought in absolutes, who once said that anyone who is not with him is against him, accepts the binary. He accepts it because he is desperate, and desperate people do not think clearly, and Palpatine has spent years ensuring that Anakin has no one to think clearly with. The Jedi could have prevented this. If Anakin had been able to go to Yoda, or Mace Windu, or any member of the Council, and say, "I am having visions of my wife dying. I need help," the story might have been different. But Anakin cannot do that, because his wife is a secret. His marriage is a violation of the Jedi Code. If he reveals his attachment, he loses everything: his rank, his place in the Order, his access to the Force training that he believes is his only hope of becoming powerful enough to save Padme. The secrecy that the Jedi Code forced upon him is the very thing that isolates him in his moment of greatest need. The system that was supposed to protect him is the system that makes him vulnerable. Anakin does not immediately accept. He is torn. He reports Palpatine's identity as a Sith Lord to Mace Windu. He does the right thing, but Windu's response is telling. He tells Anakin to stay at the temple. He does not thank him. He does not acknowledge how difficult this must be. He treats Anakin like a subordinate whose judgment cannot be trusted, even in the moment when Anakin has just handed him the most critical piece of intelligence in the war. What follows is the pivotal scene of the entire saga. Mace Windu goes to arrest Palpatine. He takes 3 other Jedi Masters with him. Palpatine kills 3 of them in seconds and duels Windu to a standstill. Anakin, unable to stay away, arrives to find Windu standing over a seemingly defeated Palpatine, lightsaber raised to strike. And Palpatine plays his final card. He tells Anakin that the Jedi are taking over, that they want to kill him, that only he has the power to save Padme. He is old and weak and broken on the floor, and his face is twisted and scarred by his own deflected lightning, and he looks like exactly what he is pretending to be, a helpless old man about to be murdered by the Jedi. Windu says Palpatine is too dangerous to be left alive. Anakin says he must stand trial. It is not the Jedi way. And in that moment, Anakin is right. The Jedi Code does not permit execution without trial. Windu is about to violate the same principles he has spent Anakin's entire life enforcing. The hypocrisy is staggering, and Palpatine has engineered the situation so that Anakin cannot miss it. Anakin draws his lightsaber and cuts off Mace Windu's hand. Palpatine unleashes Force lightning and sends Windu plummeting from the window to his death. And Anakin, standing in the wreckage of everything he believed in, falls to his knees and says the words that end his life as a Jedi. He pledges himself to Palpatine's teachings. He becomes Darth Vader. The speed of what follows is part of the horror. Palpatine does not give Anakin time to think, to reconsider, to process what he has just done. He gives him a new name, Darth Vader. The name itself is a severing. Anakin Skywalker was a person with a history, a family, a conscience. Darth Vader is a title, a function, a weapon. The naming is the first step in a process of dehumanization that will take years to complete, but begins in this instant. Palpatine does not call him Anakin again. Nobody does, from this moment forward, except the people who still remember who he was. And one by one, those people will be silenced. Palpatine gives him a mission. Go to the Jedi Temple. Kill everyone inside. Anakin goes, and he does it. The scene of Anakin walking into the Jedi Temple at the head of a column of clone troopers, is one of the most chilling images in the franchise. The film never depicts the full extent of what happens inside those walls. It does not need to. It shows you the younglings, the children, the smallest students of the Jedi Order. A boy approaches Anakin and calls him Master Skywalker. He asks what they are going to do, and Anakin ignites his lightsaber. Simultaneously, across the galaxy, Palpatine activates Order 66. The inhibitor chips in every clone soldier switch on, and the clones turn on their Jedi generals. Jedi who have fought beside these soldiers for 3 years are gunned down without warning, without hesitation, without mercy. The extermination is total. On Utapau, Obi-Wan's own troops fire on him. On Kashyyyk, Yoda senses the disturbance and barely escapes. On Megiddo, on Felucia, on Cato Neimoidia, across dozens of worlds, the Jedi die. The parallel cutting between these massacres is one of the most effective sequences in the prequel trilogy. The music, John Williams' haunting choir, plays over images of slaughter and betrayal. There is no triumph in this sequence. Even from Palpatine's perspective, this is not a victory celebration. It is an extermination, cold and efficient and final. John Williams' score for this sequence deserves specific attention because it does something unusual. It plays a theme of mourning over a sequence of victory. The Empire is winning. Palpatine's plan, decades in the making, is coming to fruition exactly as designed. And the music tells you it is a tragedy. The score does not follow the villain. It follows the dying. It gives voice to every Jedi who falls to their own troops. Every master who realizes in the last second that the soldiers behind them have changed. Every Padawan who does not understand why the people they trusted are pointing weapons at them. The music is the conscience the Empire does not have. On Coruscant, Yoda feels it. He stumbles. He puts his hand to his chest. He feels every death through the Force, every light going out, every connection severed. The greatest Jedi Master in 1,000 years, brought to his knees by the sheer weight of so many deaths happening simultaneously, and he cannot stop it. He can feel it all, and he cannot stop any of it. Bail Organa arrives at the Jedi Temple and sees the smoke. He sees clones marching through the halls where children once trained. He sees a young Padawan cut down in front of him. He flees, and the knowledge of what he has witnessed will shape every decision he makes for the next 19 years. The adoption of Leia, the formation of the Rebel Alliance, the long, careful, patient construction of a resistance movement capable of challenging the Empire. All of it begins here, at the burning temple, with a senator watching children die and deciding that this cannot stand. After the temple, Palpatine sends Vader to Mustafar to kill the Separatist leaders. The war is over, Palpatine tells him. He has no further use for the Separatists, the pawns he has been manipulating from the other side of the board. Vader goes to the volcanic planet and does what he is told. He walks into the control room where the Separatist Council is waiting and he kills them all. Newt Gunray, the Neimoidian who started the crisis on Naboo all those years ago, is the last to die. He begs for mercy. There is none. Padme deserves attention here, because her story in Revenge of the Sith is as tragic as Anakin's, even though it receives less screen time. She is a senator who has watched the republic she dedicated her life to defending transform into a dictatorship while she stood on the Senate floor. She voted against the Emergency Powers Act. She spoke against the militarization of the republic. She organized a delegation of senators to petition the Chancellor for peace, and none of it mattered. Palpatine took everything she fought for and twisted it into its opposite, and Padme watched it happen in real time, powerless to stop it. She is also pregnant, carrying twins she cannot publicly acknowledge because their father is a Jedi who is not supposed to have a wife. The secrecy that defines her marriage has extended to her pregnancy, and she bears that burden alone. She does not tell Anakin about her fears for the Republic because she does not want to add to his burdens. He does not tell her about his visions of her death because he does not want to frighten her. They love each other, and they are both drowning, and the wall of secrets between them is the very thing preventing either of them from reaching out. There is a moment in the film where Padme stands on the balcony of her apartment on Coruscant, looking out at the city, and Anakin is across the city in the Jedi Temple, looking in the same direction. They are physically separated and emotionally connected, and the camera cuts between them, showing two people who cannot reach each other across a distance that has nothing to do with geography. The film does not add music to tell you how to feel. It just holds on their faces, two people looking at each other across a city full of lies, and lets the silence speak. When Palpatine reorganizes the Republic into the Galactic Empire, when he declares himself emperor before the Senate and receives thunderous applause, Padme says something that cuts to the bone of every political tragedy in human history. "So this is how liberty dies," she says, with thunderous applause. It is the most politically astute observation in the entire saga, delivered by a character who understands exactly what is happening and can do nothing to prevent it. Padme follows Anakin to Mustafar. She has learned from Obi-Wan what has happened, and she goes to him, desperately hoping that it is not true, that there is still something of the man she loves inside the monster he has become. And for a moment, it seems like there might be. Anakin tells her about his vision for the future. They can overthrow the Emperor. They can rule together. They can bring peace to the galaxy. He believes this. He believes that everything he has done, every atrocity, has been in service of protecting her, protecting their family. And then he sees Obi-Wan on the ramp of Padme's ship, and the fragile lie he has been telling himself shatters. Anakin accuses Padme of betraying him. He accuses her of bringing Obi-Wan to kill him. And the transformation that plays across his face in that moment is one of the most disturbing things in the saga. It is not rage that arrives first. It is hurt. Genuine, searing, childlike hurt. He looks at her the way a child looks at a parent who has let them down, with disbelief, with incomprehension, with the sense that the world has fundamentally broken its promise. And then the hurt curdles into something darker. His eyes, which have been shifting between their natural blue and the yellow of the Sith throughout the film, settle into gold. And he reaches out with the Force and chokes the woman he did all of this to protect. He lifts her off the ground and squeezes the air from her lungs, while Obi-Wan screams at him to let her go. She collapses, unconscious, and Anakin turns to face his former master. The duel on Mustafar is the emotional climax of the prequel trilogy, and it is enormous. It is also the longest lightsaber duel in the entire franchise, running nearly 10 minutes of screen time, and every second of that length is justified by the emotional stakes. Anakin and Obi-Wan fight across the facility, through the corridors, along the catwalks, over the rivers of molten lava. They fight on floating platforms above a lava river. They fight on the structure of the facility itself as it collapses around them. The choreography is relentless and exhausting, and both actors trained for months to perform it. Nick Gillard, the stunt coordinator, described the fight as two brothers who know each other's moves so well that the duel becomes almost a dance. Neither can gain an advantage because each can predict what the other will do. They are mirrors of each other, and mirrors cannot defeat themselves. But the real weight of the scene comes from the knowledge of what these two men are to each other. This is not a fight between a hero and a villain. It is a fight between two brothers who love each other and can no longer coexist. Every strike carries the memory of every sparring session, every shared battlefield, every mission where they saved each other's lives. Obi-Wan knows every one of Anakin's tells. Anakin knows every one of Obi-Wan's counters. They have spent years fighting side by side, and now all of that knowledge is being used to try to kill the person they accumulated it with. There is a moment in the duel where they lock blades and push against each other, face to face, and the camera holds on them in close-up. Anakin's face is twisted with rage. Obi-Wan's face is set with determination that barely conceals grief. They are inches apart. They could be embracing. Instead, they are trying to destroy each other. The proximity is the cruelty. These two men, who loved each other more than either of them ever learned to say, are close enough to touch and can only reach each other with weapons. Obi-Wan leaps to the high bank of a lava river and calls out to Anakin. "It is over," he says. "He has the high ground. Do not try it." And Anakin, because he is Anakin, because he has never in his life accepted that anything is beyond his reach, tries it. He leaps, and Obi-Wan's lightsaber catches him, both legs, his remaining organic arm. Anakin tumbles down the embankment and comes to rest at the edge of the lava, and his body catches fire. What Obi-Wan says next is the most heartbreaking line in the Star Wars saga. He looks down at the burning, screaming wreckage of his brother, and he says, "You were the chosen one. It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them, bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness." And then, his voice breaking, he says, "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you." Obi-Wan cannot bring himself to finish it. He cannot deliver the killing blow to the person he raised, the person he loves, the person he has failed in ways he will spend the next 2 decades trying to understand. He takes Anakin's lightsaber and he walks away. He leaves Anakin burning on the bank of a river of fire, and he walks away. Sit with that for a moment. Every Jedi teaching says that attachment is the path to suffering, that love is a liability, that a Jedi must be willing to let go of everything they fear to lose. And here is Obi-Wan, the most loyal Jedi in the Order, the one who followed every rule, who believed in the system with his whole being, and he cannot do the one thing that the mission requires. He cannot kill the person he loves. His attachment to Anakin, the very thing the code warned against, stays his hand. And that mercy, that failure to let go, is what allows Palpatine to retrieve Anakin and rebuild him as Darth Vader. The irony is exquisite and terrible. Obi-Wan's love, his inability to sever the attachment the Jedi warned him about, is what gives the galaxy its greatest monster. If Obi-Wan had been the perfect Jedi, if he had suppressed his feelings and done what was necessary, Vader would have died on Mustafar, and the galaxy might have been spared 2 decades of tyranny. But then Luke would never have been born into a galaxy where his father could be redeemed. The mercy that creates the monster is also, eventually, the thread that leads to salvation. The Force, it seems, works through the very attachments the Jedi spent a millennium trying to eliminate. That decision, Obi-Wan's mercy, is what creates Darth Vader. Palpatine arrives on Mustafar and finds what is left of his apprentice. The burns cover most of his body. Both legs are gone below the knee. His left arm is gone. His lungs are seared. He is, by any medical standard, dying. And Palpatine saves him, not out of compassion, out of utility. He has spent decades cultivating this weapon, and he is not going to let it be destroyed by a lava flow. On Coruscant, in a medical facility, Vader is rebuilt. The scene intercuts with Padme, on a medical frigate, giving birth. As Vader's damaged body is encased in black armor, as the mask is lowered onto his ruined face, as the respirator engages and that first mechanical breath echoes through the chamber, Padme is delivering twins, a boy named Luke, a girl named Leia, and as Vader breathes his first breath as a machine, Padme breathes her last. The medical droids say she has lost the will to live. That has been debated by fans for 2 decades, but within the story, the meaning is clear. Padme does not die of her injuries. She dies because the person she loved has been replaced by something she does not recognize. The Anakin who choked her on Mustafar is not the Anakin she married, and the galaxy she fought to protect has been consumed by the empire he helped create. There is nothing left for her to hold on to. She names her children, she whispers that there is still good in him, and she dies. The twins are separated. Obi-Wan and Yoda, the 2 surviving members of the Jedi Council, meet with Bail Organa aboard his ship and make the decision that will shape the next generation. Leia will go with Bail, to be raised as his adopted daughter on Alderaan, in a house of privilege and political influence. Luke will go to Tatooine, to the Lars homestead, to be raised by Owen and Beru in obscurity and safety. The logic is sound. Separate the children, hide them from the Emperor, let them grow up far from the Empire's attention. If one is discovered, the other may yet survive. Obi-Wan takes Luke to Tatooine personally. He hands the infant to Owen and Beru Lars, and then he stays. He stays on Tatooine, the most desolate planet he has ever visited, the planet where his greatest failure began, and he stays there for 19 years. He watches Luke grow up from a distance. He guards the boy without the boy knowing it. He waits, in the sand and the heat and the silence, for the moment when Luke will be ready to learn the truth, or when circumstances will force the truth upon him, whichever comes first. Yoda goes to Dagobah, a swamp world teeming with life but devoid of civilization, where the dense concentration of living things in the Force will mask his presence from the Emperor's senses. He will spend 20 years in exile, meditating, waiting, slowly fading. 2 of the most powerful Jedi who ever lived, reduced to hermits on backwater worlds, hiding from the Empire their student helped create. That is the price of failure. That is the consequence of an institution that could not save one person from his own fear. Vader does not know about the children. When the mask seals and his eyes open behind those red lenses for the first time, the first thing he does is ask about Padme. And Palpatine, who may have killed her through the Force, who may have drained her life to sustain Vader's, or who may simply be lying, tells him the truth that is also a weapon. She is dead. You killed her. In your anger, Vader screams. The room shakes. Medical equipment buckles and shatters around him. And the man who did everything, sacrificed everything, betrayed everyone, and destroyed a civilization because he was afraid of losing the woman he loved, learns that she is gone, that he killed her, that the dark side, which promised him the power to save her, delivered exactly the opposite. That is the whole story of Anakin Skywalker's fall. Not a seduction, a trap, the kind that only works on someone who loves too much, who feels too deeply, who cannot accept that some things are beyond his control. The dark side did not appeal to Anakin's cruelty. It appealed to his love, and that is what makes the tragedy unbearable. A quick reminder that subscribing helps us keep making these long-form videos. We really appreciate it. The galaxy that Darth Vader now inhabits is not the galaxy he grew up in. The Republic is gone. The Jedi are gone. The Senate still exists in name, but its power has been transferred to the Emperor, who rules through fear and military force. The Clone Wars, which were engineered from both sides by Palpatine, have served their purpose. The army that was built to fight the Separatists is now the enforcement arm of the Empire. The clones who fought beside the Jedi are now the soldiers who hunt the survivors. And Vader is the Emperor's enforcer, his attack dog, his weapon. The relationship between Palpatine and Vader after Revenge of the Sith is not one of master and student in any genuine sense. Palpatine does not teach Vader, he uses him. Vader is sent to wherever resistance flickers, wherever a surviving Jedi is rumored to be hiding, wherever the Emperor's will needs to be imposed by someone terrifying enough to make examples. He is the fist of the Empire, and the mask is as much a tool of intimidation as it is a life support system. But underneath the mask, underneath the armor, underneath the respirator that forces air into lungs that can no longer breathe on their own, Anakin Skywalker is in constant pain. The suit is not comfortable. It is not a mercy. The expanded lore strongly suggests that the suit was deliberately designed by Palpatine to be painful, to keep Vader angry, to keep him suffering, because suffering feeds the dark side. The burns never fully healed. The prosthetic limbs are functional but crude. Every breath is mechanical. Every movement is accompanied by the sound of servos and hydraulics. And every moment of every day, Darth Vader is reminded of what he lost and what he has become. Vader is not alone in his task. The Empire establishes the Inquisitorius, an order of dark-side agents trained by Vader himself to hunt surviving Jedi. The Inquisitors are, in many cases, former Jedi themselves, individuals who broke under torture or turned willingly when the Order fell. They carry distinctive spinning lightsabers and answer directly to Vader. He trains them, deploys them, and kills them when they fail or displease him. The Grand Inquisitor, a Padawan who once served as a Jedi temple guard, leads the program. The second sister, the fifth brother, the seventh sister. They are given numbers instead of names, stripped of identity in the same way Vader has been stripped of his. The Jedi purge that begins with Order 66 does not end on that first night. It continues for years, as Vader and his Inquisitors track down every survivor who escaped the initial massacre. Some Jedi went into hiding. Some tried to blend into civilian populations, burying their lightsabers, suppressing their connection to the Force, pretending to be farmers, or merchants, or laborers. Vader finds them anyway. Not all of them. Some survive long enough to surface in later stories, but enough of them fall to his blade that the Jedi become, within a generation, the stuff of myth and legend. People stop believing they ever existed. The Force becomes a fairy tale, and Vader is the reason. This period of Vader's life, these first dark years of the Empire, is a study in directed self-destruction. He does not simply serve the Emperor. He obliterates every remaining trace of the life he once lived. He kills Jedi not just because Palpatine orders it, but because every Jedi he encounters is a reminder of what he was, of who he was, of the Order that both failed him and that he failed in return. Every dead Jedi is another piece of Anakin Skywalker erased. There is a version of Vader that the films do not show you directly, but that the expanded canon, the comics, the novels, the animated series, have explored in detail. It is the version that exists in those first years after the suit, when the Empire is new and Vader is still learning what it means to live inside this prison of metal and pain. He visits Padme's tomb on Naboo, He hunts surviving Jedi with a methodical brutality that goes beyond orders. He builds his castle on Mustafar, the planet where everything ended, because the dark side nexus there feeds his power, and because, on some level, he is punishing himself. He chooses to live on the site of his own destruction. The relationship between Vader and Palpatine in these years deserves close attention, because it is not what it appears to be from the outside. To the galaxy, Vader is the Emperor's loyal enforcer, his right hand, his instrument of terror. But the reality is far more complex. Vader despises Palpatine. He has known since the moment the mask sealed over his face that Palpatine used him, manipulated him, lied to him about Padme's death in order to ensure his compliance. The Sith tradition of master and apprentice is not a relationship of trust. It is a relationship of controlled hostility. The master holds power, the apprentice seeks to take it. That is the rule of two, and Vader follows it, even as it hollows him out. Vader makes multiple attempts to undermine Palpatine over the years. He recruits agents in secret. He explores the dark side not just as a tool, but as a path to power that might eventually surpass his master's. He searches for ways to become strong enough to overthrow Palpatine, just as Palpatine once overthrew his own master, Darth Plagueis. But Vader is trapped. The suit limits him. His injuries limit him. The very rage and pain that fuel his dark side power also prevent him from reaching the full potential he would need to challenge the Emperor directly. Palpatine designed it that way. The suit is not just life support, it is a cage. The Darth Vader comics, published by Marvel beginning in 2017, reveal that Vader did not even have his red lightsaber at the start. The Sith tradition requires the apprentice to take a kyber crystal from a fallen Jedi and corrupt it, bleed it, bend it to the dark side through an act of pure will and pain. Vader's crystal came from a Jedi named Kirak Infila, a combat specialist who had removed himself from the war. Vader hunted him, killed him, and took his crystal. The bleeding process, the corruption of the kyber, nearly broke Vader. The crystal showed him a vision of a different path, one where he turned the blade on Palpatine and returned to the light. He rejected it. He chose the dark, and the crystal turned red. That choice, made in pain, made in grief, made with the full knowledge of what he was giving up, is the foundation of everything Vader does for the next 2 decades. He is not a puppet. He is not mindless. He knows what he has become, and he has chosen it. Not because he believes the dark side is right, because he believes there is nothing left for him in the light. Vader's fortress on Mustafar, first glimpsed in Rogue One and explored in detail in the comics, is itself a monument to self-inflicted suffering. He builds it on the exact planet where Obi-Wan left him burning. He could have built it anywhere. There are beautiful worlds in the galaxy, peaceful worlds, worlds where the air does not taste like sulfur and the ground does not shake with volcanic fury. He chooses Mustafar because the pain there feeds his connection to the dark side, and because, on a level he would never acknowledge, he is punishing himself. The fortress sits atop a dark side nexus, a wound in the Force, and Vader uses that nexus to try to breach the barrier between life and death, to reach through to wherever Padme has gone. He tries to bring her back. He fails. Every time, he fails. And every failure drives him deeper into the darkness, because the darkness is the only thing that promises him the possibility of success, even as it ensures that success will never come. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who are terrified of you. Vader's officers obey him instantly. His stormtroopers snap to attention when he passes. The pilots of his fleet maintain formation with military precision, but none of them know him. None of them speak to him except in response to orders. None of them would dare ask him a personal question, or share a joke, or sit with him in silence the way Obi-Wan once did, or Ahsoka, or Padme. The armor that keeps him alive also keeps everyone else at a distance that can never be closed. He is the most feared man in the galaxy, and he has not had a genuine human connection in years. 19 years pass between Revenge of the Sith and the original Star Wars film, and in that gap, Vader becomes exactly what the galaxy fears him to be. A figure of absolute dread. He walks into a room and people stop breathing. Not because of the armor or the respirator or the cape, though all of those contribute, because of what he represents. Unchecked power in service of an empire that will crush anything in its path. But the story does not leave that gap entirely empty. 2 key stories fill it in. and both of them reveal something essential about who Vader is underneath the mask. The first is Star Wars Rebels, the animated series that ran from 2014 to 2018. Set roughly 5 years before the original Star Wars film, it follows a small rebel cell operating in the Outer Rim, and in its second season, it brings Vader face to face with someone from his past. Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka, who left the Jedi Order before its destruction, who survived Order 66 by virtue of already being gone, has spent years in hiding. She has been working with the growing rebellion under the codename Fulcrum, channeling intelligence to rebel cells while keeping her identity secret. And when she finally encounters Darth Vader, she does not want to believe what she is sensing, that the thing inside that suit is the person who trained her, the person who called her Snips, the person who fought beside her through a war and taught her everything she knows. The confrontation comes in Twilight of the Apprentice, the Season 2 finale of Rebels, which aired on March 30th, 2016. On the ancient Sith world of Malachor, inside a crumbling Sith temple, Ahsoka faces Vader. She tells him she will not leave him, not this time. Vader responds with the cold finality of someone who has killed the person she is looking for. Anakin Skywalker was weak, he says. He destroyed him. Then Ahsoka strikes Vader's mask. A piece of it falls away, and through the gap, she sees his eye, his actual eye, and she hears his voice, not the deep mechanical bass of Darth Vader, but the voice of Anakin Skywalker, saying her name, Ahsoka. The show layers both voices, Matt Lanter, who voices Anakin in the Clone Wars and Rebels, and James Earl Jones, who voices Vader, speaking simultaneously. The effect is devastating. For 1 second, the mask cracks, literally and figuratively, and the person underneath reaches out. And then the mask closes again. Vader reignites his saber and continues the fight. Ahsoka is saved from death only by the intervention of Ezra Bridger, who pulls her through a portal in the world between worlds in a later season. But the moment itself, the cracked mask, the doubled voice, Vader saying Ahsoka's name with something that might be recognition, or might be pain, or might be both, that moment tells you everything about the state of Anakin Skywalker inside the armor. He is still in there. He does not want to be, but he is. The second key story is the Obi-Wan Kenobi limited series, which premiered on Disney Plus on May 27, 2022. Set 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, it shows us a broken Obi-Wan living in hiding on Tatooine, watching over the young Luke Skywalker from a distance. And it brings him face to face with Vader for the first time since Mustafar. The series explores what 10 years of exile have done to Obi-Wan. He works in a meat processing plant on Tatooine. He sleeps in a cave. He has buried his lightsaber in the sand. The most skilled Jedi warrior of his generation, the man who defeated Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar, the man who killed Darth Maul, is cutting slabs of meat for a living and trying not to think about the past. He has nightmares. He hears Anakin's voice in his sleep. He watches over Luke from a distance, but Owen Lars has told him to stay away, and Obi-Wan respects that boundary because he is not sure he has the right to do otherwise. He failed Anakin. He failed the Order. He is not confident that he would not fail Luke too. When the Inquisitors kidnap the young Leia Organa as bait to draw out Obi-Wan, he is forced back into action. And when he finally faces Vader, the result is devastating. Their first encounter in the series is not a fight, it is a mauling. Vader finds Obi-Wan on a mining world called Mapuzo and beats him with contemptuous ease. He drags him through fire, echoing what happened on Mustafar, making his former master feel what he felt. The Obi-Wan who shows up to this fight is a shadow of the Jedi he once was, disconnected from the Force, eaten alive by guilt, and Vader dismantles him without effort. The fire is deliberate. Vader pulls the flames toward Obi-Wan, holds him in the heat, makes him burn. This is not just combat. This is theater. This is revenge performed as ritual. Vader wants Obi-Wan to understand what it felt like on the banks of that lava river, to experience the same agony, the same helplessness, the same knowledge that the person causing you pain is someone you once loved. The cruelty is personal in a way that goes beyond the dark side. It is intimate. It is the violence of a broken heart. But the series finale gives us a very different encounter. In Part 6, which aired on June 22, 2022, Obi-Wan faces Vader on a barren moon, and this time, Obi-Wan fights as himself. The duel is fierce, and Obi-Wan wins. He buries Vader under a landslide of rocks, and when the dust clears, Vader's mask is split open. Half of Anakin's face is visible, and what Obi-Wan sees there, the scarred, twisted remnant of the boy he raised, breaks him. Obi-Wan apologizes. He says he is sorry for what happened. He says he failed Anakin. And Vader, speaking through the broken mask in that doubled voice, the deep bass overlaid with Anakin's natural tone, says something that is simultaneously a comfort and a horror. He says Obi-Wan did not kill Anakin. He did. Anakin was not destroyed by Obi-Wan's failure. He was destroyed by his own choices. Vader is not blaming Obi-Wan. He is claiming ownership of his darkness. He is telling the man who loved him that the guilt is misplaced, that Anakin chose this, that there is no one to save. Obi-Wan walks away weeping. He calls Vader by his Sith name for the first time. Goodbye, Darth. And in doing so, he lets go of the hope that Anakin can be reached. At least for now. At least until a boy on Tatooine grows old enough to try. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series also gives us a remarkable scene between Vader and the Grand Inquisitor's subordinate, a young woman called Reva, the third sister, who has been hunting Obi-Wan with a ferocity that has puzzled even the other Inquisitors. The series reveals that Reva was one of the younglings in the Jedi Temple the night Anakin attacked. She survived the massacre by hiding among the bodies of dead children and playing dead herself. She has spent her entire adult life working her way into the Inquisitorius, not because she believes in the Empire, but because she wants to get close enough to Vader to kill him. Her entire career, her betrayal of the Jedi path, her service to the dark side, all of it has been an elaborate, decades-long assassination plan motivated by one thing: revenge for the children Anakin slaughtered. She fails. Vader sees through her plot and runs her through with a lightsaber. He does not even consider her a threat. The woman who has devoted her entire life to avenging the younglings he murdered is, to Vader, an annoyance. A footnote. That is perhaps the most devastating thing about Vader as a character. The atrocities that define other people's entire lives, the traumas that shape their every waking moment, are things Vader does not even remember committing. The children in the temple were not people to him. They were obstacles. They were a task Palpatine assigned. And the fact that one of them survived and spent 20 years consumed by grief and rage and hatred over what he did, that fact registers with Vader as barely worth acknowledging. That asymmetry, the gap between the weight of an atrocity for the victim and its weightlessness for the perpetrator, is one of the darkest truths the Star Wars saga has ever articulated, and it makes Vader's eventual redemption more complicated, not less. Because the question is not just whether Vader can be saved, it is whether his salvation matters to the people he destroyed, and the honest answer is that it does not. Reva does not care if Anakin Skywalker finds peace. The dead younglings will not feel better because their killer chose love in his final minutes. Redemption is a gift that belongs to the redeemed. The people they harmed have to find their own healing, and it has nothing to do with whether the villain achieves grace. If you are still with us, thank you. And if you have not subscribed yet, we would love to have you along for the rest. That is the state of Darth Vader as the original trilogy begins. A man who has deliberately burned away every connection to his former self. A man who has told the two people who loved him most, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, that Anakin Skywalker is dead. A man who serves an emperor he despises in a suit that causes him constant agony on a planet where his body was destroyed. He is, by any measure, the most miserable being in the galaxy, and he has chosen every piece of that misery. Star Wars, the film that started everything, was released on May 25, 1977. It was later subtitled Episode 4, A New Hope. George Lucas has spoken about how the film was nearly abandoned by the studio, how the production was chaotic, how he was not certain the movie would work until he sat in a theater and heard the audience react to the opening crawl. The cultural impact of what followed is almost impossible to overstate. Star Wars reshaped cinema, invented the modern blockbuster, created a merchandising empire, and embedded itself in the collective consciousness of multiple generations. And at the center of it all, from the very first frame, is Darth Vader. In that film, Darth Vader is not a tragic figure. He is a villain, pure, terrifying, and absolute. That is not a contradiction of what came later. That is the point. It is, in fact, the most important point the saga makes about the nature of evil. When you meet Vader in A New Hope, you are meeting the finished product. The tragedy is buried so deep that even Vader himself may not be able to feel it anymore. What is left is the function, the enforcer, the weapon. David Prowse wore the suit. James Earl Jones provided the voice. The design, by concept artist Ralph McQuarrie, combined samurai armor with a Nazi helmet and a skull-like mask, creating a silhouette that is instantly recognizable from any angle, at any distance, in any lighting. The sound designer, Ben Burt, created the breathing by recording himself through a scuba regulator. That breathing, that steady mechanical inhalation and exhalation, became as iconic as any piece of dialogue in the film. It is the sound of Darth Vader. It precedes him into rooms. It follows him out. It fills silences with menace and turns every pause into a threat. 20 years later, when Lucas began telling the story of how that breathing came to be, the sound would carry a completely different weight. Not menace, sorrow. The sound of a man whose own lungs cannot sustain him, who lives every moment at the mercy of a machine, who breathes not because his body wants to, but because a mechanical system forces it. The opening scene of A New Hope tells you everything you need to know about how the galaxy experiences Darth Vader. A rebel blockade runner, the Tantive 4, is fleeing across the stars with stolen plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. An Imperial Star Destroyer overtakes it, and stormtroopers blast their way aboard. There is a firefight in the white corridors of the ship. Rebel soldiers fall. Smoke fills the hallway, and then Vader appears. He does not run. He does not duck. He does not draw a weapon. He steps over the bodies of the dead and walks into the scene with the calm of someone who has done this 1,000 times, because he has. He is enormous, all black armor and flowing cape, and the sound of his breathing fills every silence. He surveys the carnage, and then he starts asking questions. Where are the plans? Where is the ambassador? His voice, James Earl Jones, providing the unmistakable bass that has defined the character since 1977, carries absolute authority. There is no negotiation. There is no appeal. There is Vader, and there is compliance. Princess Leia Organa is captured. She is defiant, sharp-tongued, unafraid in a way that immediately distinguishes her from everyone else on the ship. She lies to Vader's face, claiming diplomatic immunity, and Vader dismisses her with the casual contempt of someone who has heard every excuse. She is taken prisoner. The plans, hidden in a droid named R2-D2, are jettisoned to Tatooine. There is a scene later, aboard the Death Star, that reveals a crucial detail about Vader's position within the Imperial hierarchy. A conference room full of Imperial officers debates the threat of the rebellion, and Admiral Motti dismisses Vader's devotion to the Force as sorcerer's ways, an ancient religion that cannot match the technological power of the Death Star. Vader responds by force-choking Motti from across the table, lifting the man's hand to his own throat, as if an invisible fist is closing around his windpipe. Tarkin orders Vader to release him, and Vader obeys. That last detail is the important one. Vader obeys Tarkin, not Palpatine, Tarkin. A non-force-sensitive military commander tells the Dark Lord of the Sith to stand down, and Vader stands down. This tells you that Vader's authority, while terrifying, is not absolute. He operates within a chain of command. He is a weapon, and weapons do not give orders. They receive them. The grand military officers of the Empire do not answer to Vader. Vader answers to the Emperor, and the Emperor delegates operational authority to men like Tarkin. Vader is feared, but he is also, in a very real sense, leashed. The monster is on a chain, and the chain is held by a man who sits on a throne on Coruscant and has no intention of ever letting go. Vader interrogates Leia. The film does not show exactly what happens in that interrogation room, but it shows a floating black sphere entering Leia's cell, covered in needles and probes, and Leia's face as the door closes. The suggestion is clear and deliberately horrifying. Vader tortures a young woman for information. That young woman is his daughter, though neither of them knows it. Vader stands in a room with his own child and causes her pain, and the Force, which should be screaming at him that something is wrong, is silent. Or perhaps not silent. Perhaps he simply cannot hear it anymore. And here is where the story loops back to where it began. The plans land on Tatooine, the planet where Anakin Skywalker was born, where Shmi raised him, where Qui-Gon found him, where everything started. and they end up in the hands of a young moisture farmer named Luke Skywalker. Luke does not know who his father is. He has been raised by Owen and Beru Lars, Shmi's stepson and his wife, on the same moisture farm where Anakin once returned to find his mother gone. Owen has kept Luke sheltered, kept him away from the wider galaxy, kept him ignorant of his heritage, not out of cruelty, out of fear. Owen knows what happened to Anakin. He knows what the Jedi brought into their family, and he has spent 19 years trying to make sure it does not happen again. But it does, because the Force is not done with the Skywalker family. R2-D2 carries a message from Leia to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who has been living as a hermit in the Junlan wastes under the name Ben Kenobi. Luke finds Obi-Wan, and the old Jedi tells him a carefully edited version of the truth. His father was a Jedi Knight named Anakin Skywalker. He was a good man, a good pilot, a good friend, and he was betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader. That is not technically a lie. From Obi-Wan's perspective, Anakin Skywalker was murdered by Darth Vader. The person who emerged from Mustafar is not the person Obi-Wan knew. But it is a deception, and it is a deception that will have consequences. Luke builds his understanding of his father on a foundation of half-truths, and when the full truth arrives, it will nearly destroy him. Owen and Beru are killed by Imperial stormtroopers searching for the droids. Their bodies are left in the smoking wreckage of the homestead, and Luke, standing before the ruins of the only home he has ever known, makes the same choice Anakin made at 9. He leaves, but where Anakin left because destiny pulled him away from someone he loved, Luke leaves because the people he loved are already gone. There is nothing left to stay for, and so he follows Obi-Wan into the war. Luke and Obi-Wan hire Han Solo and Chewbacca to transport them to Alderaan on the Millennium Falcon. They arrive to find the planet gone. In its place, rubble, dust, a field of debris that stretches across what used to be a world. The Death Star hangs in space nearby, and the Falcon is pulled into its hangar by a tractor beam. The Death Star is the Empire's crowning achievement and its ultimate expression of philosophy. A space station the size of a small moon, capable of destroying an entire planet with a single blast. Grand Moff Tarkin, the station's commander, demonstrates its power by obliterating Alderaan, Leia's homeworld. Billions of people, an entire civilization, gone in a flash of light because a princess would not reveal the location of a rebel base. Vader is present for this. He stands in the room while it happens. He does not object. He does not flinch. He has moved so far beyond the boy who built a droid for his mother that the destruction of an entire world does not even register as something worth commenting on. That is not a personality trait. That is a scar. It is what happens when you spend 2 decades suppressing every human response and replacing it with obedience. The destruction of Alderaan is a moment that reveals the full scope of what Vader has become, or perhaps more precisely, what he has allowed himself to become in service of a regime he does not even believe in. Alderaan is Padmé's world in spirit, a planet of peace and culture, of art and diplomacy. Bail Organa, who adopted Leia, who stood with Padmé in the Senate, who helped hide the twins after their birth, lives there. The destruction of Alderaan is, from Vader's perspective, the destruction of everything his wife's world represented. And he stands there and lets it happen. He does not give the order. That is Tarkin. But he does not stop it. He does not try. The man who once tore apart a Tusken camp because his mother was hurt does nothing when billions of people, including families and children and innocents of every description, are vaporized by a weapon he helped protect. That is what 20 years of the dark side does. It does not make you passionate in your cruelty. It makes you indifferent. And indifference, in the face of that scale of suffering, is the darkest form of evil there is. But something stirs when Luke arrives on the Death Star. Obi-Wan is with him, and Vader senses his old master's presence. There is a moment where Vader says he has not felt this presence since, and he does not finish the sentence. The film does not comment on this. It does not add music to tell you how to feel. It just lets Vader trail off into silence, and the silence says everything. Since Mustafar, since the fire, since the last time he saw the face of the person who left him burning on a riverbank. Vader and Obi-Wan meet in the corridors of the Death Star, and their duel is quiet, almost meditative. 2 old men with old wounds circling each other with lightsabers. The choreography is slow by modern standards, but that slowness is the point. This is not a display of athleticism. This is a funeral. Obi-Wan knows he is going to die. He has accepted it. He tells Vader that if he strikes him down, he will become more powerful than Vader can possibly imagine. And then he raises his blade, closes his eyes, and lets Vader's strike pass through him. His body vanishes. His robes fall empty to the floor. Luke screams. He fires his blaster at the stormtroopers in a rage, and Han has to pull him away, has to drag him toward the Millennium Falcon while the boy he barely knows howls with grief. Luke watches the only connection to his father disappear, struck down by the very man who, though Luke does not know it yet, is his father. The symmetry is perfect and devastating. And here is something the film never makes explicit, but that the larger story makes unavoidable. When Vader strikes Obi-Wan down, he expects to feel something. Satisfaction, closure, victory. He has been thinking about this moment for 19 years, the moment when the man who left him burning would finally pay for that mercy. But Obi-Wan does not fall. His body vanishes. His robes crumple to the deck, empty. And Vader, standing over nothing, confused, kicks at the robes as if looking for the trick. There is no trick. There is something the dark side cannot explain, something Vader cannot access, something that Obi-Wan achieved in death that Vader, for all his power, has never managed in life. Transcendence. A continuation of consciousness beyond the body. The very thing Vader has been desperately seeking, the power to cheat death that drove him to the dark side in the first place. Obi-Wan achieves by surrendering to it. The irony is so precise that it almost feels deliberate, as if the Force itself is making a point. Vader killed Obi-Wan the way he killed Anakin Skywalker, the way he kills everything that connects him to who he used to be, not with passion, with the mechanical efficiency of a man who has made a practice of severing every tie to his former life. The Death Star is destroyed. Luke, guided by Obi-Wan's voice from beyond death, trusts the Force and fires the shot that detonates the station's reactor. Tarkin dies. The Death Star crew dies. But Vader survives. He is in his TIE fighter, spinning away into space after a brief dogfight in the trench, and he is alive. The Force has plans for him still. During the trench run, Vader enters the battle personally. He climbs into his custom TIE advanced fighter and pursues the Rebel X-Wings down the narrow trench that leads to the Death Star's thermal exhaust port. His piloting is superb, a reminder that Anakin Skywalker was once the best pilot in the Republic. He shoots down one Rebel pilot after another, clearing the trench with a cold efficiency that is almost beautiful. He is seconds away from destroying Luke's X-Wing, has the shot lined up, has the targeting computer locked, and then something happens. He senses Luke, not consciously, not in a way he can articulate, but the Force stirs around this pilot in a way that Vader has not felt since Obi-Wan died on the Death Star. There is a connection, a thread, a pull, and then Han Solo's Millennium Falcon comes screaming out of nowhere and clips Vader's wingman, sending Vader's fighter spinning into the void, and the moment passes. Luke fires. The shot enters the exhaust port. The Death Star explodes, and Vader, tumbling through space in a damaged fighter, survives. What is significant about Vader's survival is what it tells you about the story's architecture. The Death Star, the Empire's greatest weapon, is destroyed, and the villain lives. That is not a sequel hook. That is a statement. The real conflict of this story is not between the Rebellion and the Empire. It is between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, between a son and a father, between hope and despair. And that conflict is just beginning. What makes the original Star Wars film so effective as the first chapter of Vader's story, viewed in retrospect, is everything it withholds. In 1977, audiences knew nothing about Anakin Skywalker. They did not know about Tatooine's slave quarters, or the Jedi Council, or the Clone Wars, or Padme, or any of it. Vader was a villain without context, a monster without an origin, and that absence of backstory made him more frightening, not less. He could be anything. He could have always been this way. The idea that there was once a child inside that armor, a child who loved his mother and built droids and dreamed of seeing the stars, was unimaginable. And that unimaginability is itself a measure of how far Anakin has fallen. He has become a creature so thoroughly defined by darkness that the idea of his ever having been anything else seems impossible. 3 years pass between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, which was released on May 21st, 1980. And in that time, something has shifted inside Vader. He has learned the name of the pilot who destroyed the Death Star, Skywalker. His son is alive. The Darth Vader comics depict this moment, and it is worth pausing to consider what happens inside the suit when Vader first hears the name. He is in conversation with Boba Fett, who has been investigating the pilot on Vader's orders. Fett delivers the name, Skywalker, and in the comic panels, the world around Vader fractures. The artist shows the suit cracking, the ground breaking, the reality of 20 years of lies shattering in a single word. It is not a literal depiction. It is an emotional one. Everything Vader has built his existence on since Mustafar. The certainty that Padme was dead, that the child was dead, that there was nothing left of his former life worth preserving. All of it collapses in the space between one breath and the next. And then something happens that has not happened in years. The transparasteel viewport on Vader's Star Destroyer cracks from the inside. The Force erupts from Vader in a wave of emotion, so powerful that it damages the ship around him. Not rage, not hatred, something older than that. Something the dark side was supposed to have killed. Think about what that revelation does to a man who was told that he killed his wife and their unborn child. Palpatine lied to him, or at least withheld the truth, which for Palpatine amounts to the same thing. Vader's son survived. The child he thought he destroyed is alive, strong in the Force, and fighting for the rebellion. Every certainty that Vader has built his existence on since Mustafar is suddenly unstable. If Padme survived long enough to give birth, if the child lived, what else did Palpatine lie about? What else is still out there, still connected to the person Vader used to be? The Empire Strikes Back opens with Vader obsessed. He has deployed probe droids across the galaxy, thousands of them, searching for the rebel base. His officers are terrified of him, and with reason. He kills Admiral Ozzel for exiting hyperspace too close to the Hoth system and alerting the rebels to the fleet's presence. He does it through a view screen, using the Force to choke a man who is standing on a different ship, and then calmly promotes Captain Piet to take his place. The casualness of the killing is the horror. Vader does not murder Ozzel in anger. He murders him in efficiency. Ozzel made an error. The error had consequences. Vader removes the source of the error and moves on. The Battle of Hoth is a rout. The Empire overwhelms the rebel base with AT-AT walkers, massive armored machines that stride across the ice like mechanical dinosaurs. Their legs too thick for the rebels' blaster cannons. Their advance as steady and implacable as the Empire itself. Vader walks through the conquered base afterward, stepping over abandoned equipment, past frozen corridors, past the remnants of a resistance that has been driven out for the third time. He is looking for Luke. Luke is not there. The rebels scatter. Luke separates from the main group and travels to the Dagobah system, where the Force ghost of Obi-Wan has directed him to find Yoda and complete his Jedi training. Vader does not know about Dagobah. He does not know about Yoda. The two surviving Jedi Masters have kept their secrets well, and the Emperor, who might know, has not shared the information with his apprentice. Palpatine has his own plans for Luke Skywalker, plans that do not necessarily align with Vader's. The Emperor wants Luke turned to the dark side, yes, but he also wants Luke as a potential replacement for Vader. The rule of two is not sentimental. If the son is stronger than the father is disposable. On Dagobah, while Luke trains with Yoda, the ancient Jedi Master tries to teach him the same lessons the Order always taught. Patience, discipline, control. Let go of your attachments. Let go of your fear. But Luke, like his father before him, cannot let go. And the Force shows him why. There is a cave on Dagobah, strong with the dark side, and Yoda sends Luke inside. Luke asks what is in there. Yoda tells him, only what you take with you. Luke takes his weapons. Inside the cave, Luke encounters a vision of Darth Vader. They fight. Luke strikes Vader down and the helmet cracks open, and inside, Luke sees his own face staring back at him. The cave is showing him the truth that the rest of the saga is built on. The line between hero and villain is not as clear as Luke wants it to be. The darkness he is fighting is not something external. It is something he carries inside him, inherited from a father he does not yet know he has. The cave tells Luke what Vader will confirm on Cloud City. You are your father's son. The question is whether that means you are doomed to become him. Yoda warns Luke not to leave his training early. Obi-Wan's ghost agrees. They tell him that if he goes to save his friends, he risks everything. He is not ready. The dark side will test him. But Luke, because he is a Skywalker, because the Skywalker instinct has always been to run toward the people they love, regardless of the cost, goes anyway. He leaves Dagobah and flies to Cloud City, and he walks into exactly the trap that Vader has set for him. Meanwhile, Vader pursues the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo's ship, carrying Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO. The pursuit through an asteroid field is relentless. Vader also summons bounty hunters, a collection of the galaxy's most ruthless trackers: Boba Fett, Bossk, Dengar, IG-88, Forlom, Zuckuss. They stand on the bridge of Vader's Star Destroyer, and he tells them what he wants: the Millennium Falcon. Its crew, alive. No disintegrations, he tells Boba Fett specifically, which implies a history between them. A previous job where Fett's methods were too final for Vader's purposes. The fact that Vader resorts to bounty hunters tells you something about the scale of his obsession. He commands the largest military fleet in the galaxy. He has Star Destroyers, TIE Fighters, probe droids, legions of stormtroopers, and none of it is enough. He is throwing every resource he has at the problem of finding his son, and the desperation underneath the efficiency is palpable. This is not a military commander pursuing an enemy. This is a father trying to find his child. The methods are monstrous, but the motivation is the same one that drove Anakin across the desert to find Shmi, the same compulsion that defined him since he was 9 years old. The people he loves are in danger, and he will tear the galaxy apart to reach them. Boba Fett succeeds where the Imperial fleet could not. He tracks the Falcon to Bespin, and when the Falcon eventually seeks refuge at Cloud City on the gas planet Bespin, Vader is already there. He has cut a deal with Lando Calrissian, the city's administrator, and he has set a trap. Not for Han, not for Leia, for Luke. Because Vader knows that Luke will come for his friends. That is what Skywalkers do. They come for the people they love, even when it is a trap, even when they know it is a trap, because they cannot bear the thought of someone they care about suffering and them doing nothing. Han Solo is tortured, not for information. Vader does not ask him a single question. The torture is a signal, a disturbance in the Force that Luke will feel across the galaxy. Vader is using Han's pain as bait. When Lando protests, when he says this was not part of the deal, Vader alters the deal and dares Lando to pray he does not alter it further. That line, delivered with the calm authority of absolute power, tells you everything about how Vader operates. Agreements are tools, people are tools. Everything is a tool in service of his obsession. Han is frozen in carbonite, a test of the carbon freezing chamber that Vader intends to use on Luke. Vader wants to deliver Luke to the Emperor, and he needs a way to transport a powerful Force-sensitive safely. The freezing process could kill a human being, which is why Han is the test subject. If Solo dies, the loss is minor. If Solo survives, the process is safe enough for Luke. Before the freezing, there is a moment between Han and Leia that has become one of the most iconic exchanges in cinema. Leia tells Han she loves him. Han, facing what might be his death, responds with 3 words: "I know." The line was improvised by Harrison Ford, and it works because it is pure Han Solo, cocky and vulnerable, and refusing to be sentimental even at the end. But within the larger story, the moment resonates differently. Love, openly declared, honestly expressed, without shame or secrecy. That is the thing Anakin and Padme never had. Their love was hidden, forbidden, wrapped in fear and lies. Han and Leia say it out loud, in front of stormtroopers and bounty hunters and Darth Vader himself. The man inside the suit watches a woman tell a man she loves him, and the man says he knows, and Vader orders the freezing without comment. But think about what that scene looks like from inside the mask. A love freely expressed. The thing Anakin was told he could never have, displayed in front of him like a mirror showing a life he was never allowed to live. Han survives the process, and Vader hands him over to Boba Fett like a piece of cargo. And Luke comes, just as Vader knew he would. He walks into Cloud City, and he walks into the trap, and the confrontation that follows is the centerpiece of the entire Star Wars saga. The duel begins in the carbon freezing chamber, the same room where Han Solo was frozen. Steam rises from the platform. The lighting is harsh and industrial, all oranges and blacks, and Vader is waiting in the shadows like a predator in a cave. Luke ignites his lightsaber, the blue blade that was once his father's, though he does not yet understand the full weight of that inheritance. And the fight begins. Luke is outmatched from the start. That needs to be understood clearly. because the film does not understate it. Vader fights with one hand for much of the duel. He deflects Luke's attacks casually, almost lazily, turning aside strikes that Luke throws with everything he has. Vader is testing his abilities, gauging his strength, and the assessment is mixed. The boy has power, raw, untrained, explosive power, but he does not have control. He does not have discipline. He does not have the years of study and practice that Vader accumulated as Anakin Skywalker under Obi-Wan's tutelage. Luke fights like what he is, a young man who has been training for a matter of weeks, not the years it takes to truly master the lightsaber. Vader uses the Force as aggressively as his blade. He tears machinery from the walls and hurls it at Luke. He rips conduits from the ceiling and sends them flying. The environment itself becomes a weapon. Luke is driven backward through the corridors of Cloud City, past windows that look out on the clouds of Bespin, through rooms and hallways that become more industrial, more dangerous, the deeper they go. The fight moves through the reactor control room, where the catwalk narrows and the drop below becomes infinite, and finally onto a narrow gantry overlooking a seemingly bottomless shaft. Vader disarms Luke, literally. He catches Luke's blade in a bind and severs his right hand at the wrist. The lightsaber, Anakin's old lightsaber, the one Obi-Wan gave to Luke, tumbles into the abyss along with Luke's hand. Luke crawls backward along the gantry, wounded, exhausted, cornered, and Vader stands over him and delivers the line that changed cinema. "Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father," Vader says. Luke, gasping, says Obi-Wan told him enough. He told him Vader killed his father, and Vader says, "No, I am your father." The line is often misquoted as, "Luke, I am your father," but the actual dialogue is more powerful than the misquotation. "No, I am your father." The word "no" is doing all the work. It is a correction. It is Vader rejecting the story that Obi-Wan told, the comfortable lie that let Luke build his identity around a dead hero instead of a living monster. That single syllable tears down everything Luke believes about himself, about his family, about the person he was named after. The delivery is precise, almost gentle. There is no gloating in James Earl Jones's voice. There is something closer to pleading. Vader is not trying to hurt Luke with this information. He is trying to recruit him. He asks Luke to join him. Together, they can destroy the Emperor and rule the galaxy as father and son. It is, in its twisted way, the first genuine offer of connection Vader has made since Mustafar. He is reaching out to the only person left in the galaxy who shares his blood, and he is doing it the only way he knows how, by offering power. Luke refuses. He looks down into the shaft, and he makes a choice that mirrors the one his father made in Palpatine's office, but in reverse. Anakin, faced with the possibility of losing Padme, chose to grab power at any cost. Luke, faced with the possibility of gaining power at the cost of his soul, chooses to let go. Literally, he releases his grip on the gantry and plummets into the shaft. He would rather die than become what his father became. The Force catches him. He slides through the Cloud City's ventilation system and is ejected beneath the floating structure, where he clings to a weather vane, battered by the winds of Bespin, hanging above an infinite drop. He reaches out through the Force, not to Obi-Wan, not to Yoda, but to Leia. He calls to her without knowing why she can hear him, without understanding the connection that runs between them. Leia senses him. The Falcon circles back. They pull him to safety. And Luke, sitting in the medical bay of the Falcon, his hand gone, his world shattered, his identity in ruins, stares out the viewport at the stars and says nothing. But the damage is done. Luke knows. The hero's father is the villain. The monster is family. And the next film will be about whether that knowledge destroys Luke or saves Vader, or both. The final image of Vader in The Empire Strikes Back is worth holding on to. He is standing on the bridge of his Star Destroyer, looking out the viewport. Luke has escaped. The trap failed. The Millennium Falcon has jumped to hyperspace. And Vader just stands there, hands clasped behind his back, staring into the emptiness of space. The camera holds on him from behind, and there is something in his posture, something in the way he stands absolutely still while the bridge crew moves around him, that reads as loss. He had his son in front of him. He offered him everything he had to offer: power, partnership, the galaxy itself. And his son chose to fall rather than take his hand. Think about what that rejection means to a man who has already lost everything else: his mother, his wife, his Padawan, his body, his name, his soul, and now his son would rather die than stand beside him. The mask hides the expression, but the posture tells the story. Vader is alone, utterly, completely, irrevocably alone, and for the first time in decades, he feels it. If you have made it this far, you are one of us. Consider subscribing if you have not already. There is a scene in The Empire Strikes Back that most people remember only as a visual curiosity, and then move past, and it is one of the most important moments in the entire saga. It lasts only a few seconds. A meditation chamber aboard Vader's Star Destroyer opens, and we see the back of his head. His helmet is being lowered into place by a mechanical arm. For just an instant, we see pale, scarred skin, the back of a human skull, damaged and discolored, and then the helmet seals, and Vader is Vader again. The meditation chamber is called a hyperbaric pod, a pressurized environment where the atmosphere is rich enough for Vader to breathe without the mask. It is the only place in the galaxy where he can exist as something other than the armored figure the world sees. Inside that pod, he is just a man, a scarred, damaged, exhausted man, sitting alone in a sealed sphere, breathing air that does not come through a filter. These are the moments when whatever remains of Anakin Skywalker is closest to the surface. Not because the pod is special, but because the mask is off. And the mask is not just a physical object. It is a psychological barrier. When Vader wears the mask, he is Vader. When the mask comes off, in those rare private moments, the boundary between Vader and Anakin becomes permeable. The thoughts he suppresses all day, the memories he buries, the faces he tries not to see, they surface in the silence of the pod like bodies rising from deep water. That is the only glimpse the original trilogy gives you of the man inside the machine, and it is designed to make you uncomfortable. Not because of the scars, though those are jarring, because the image reminds you that there is a person in there, a body, a human being who has to take the helmet off sometimes, who sits alone in a pressurized chamber where he can breathe without the respirator, who exists in those private moments as something other than the monster the galaxy sees. The film does not linger on this. It shows you just enough to plant the seed of a question that the next film will answer. Is there anything left inside that machine worth saving? Rogue One, released on December 16, 2016, takes place immediately before A New Hope and gives us one of the most visceral depictions of Vader in the entire franchise. The film follows a team of rebel operatives who steal the Death Star plans, and Vader appears only briefly, but his appearance is definitive. The hallway scene. The rebel soldiers have transmitted the Death Star plans to the Tantive 4, but a physical copy is being carried through the corridors of a disabled rebel flagship. The lights go out, the corridor goes dark, and a red lightsaber ignites. Vader walks through that hallway and kills every soldier in his path. He deflects blaster bolts. He pins men to the ceiling with the Force. He rips weapons from their hands. He is unstoppable, inhuman, a force of nature in the shape of a man. The soldiers scream. They fire. They try to pass the data disk from hand to hand, knowing they are going to die, knowing the information has to survive even if they do not. The last soldier shoves the disk through a closing door just as Vader reaches him. There is a moment at the start of the hallway sequence where Vader's lightsaber ignites and the red glow illuminates the faces of the soldiers. You can see the exact instant they understand what is about to happen. The shift from confusion to recognition to terror takes less than a second, and it is written on their faces with absolute clarity. These men have heard stories about Vader. Every soldier in the Rebel Alliance has heard the stories. A dark figure with a red blade who cannot be stopped, cannot be reasoned with, cannot be survived. And now the stories are real, and they are standing in a dark corridor with the stories walking toward them, and there is nowhere to run. The scene lasts less than 2 minutes, and it is terrifying. Not action movie terrifying, horror movie terrifying. Because these are not faceless enemies. They are people, with faces you can see, and they are being slaughtered by something that cannot be stopped and cannot be reasoned with. This is what Darth Vader means to the galaxy. Not a complex character, not a tragic figure, a nightmare in the shape of a man, walking through a dark hallway, killing everyone in his path. And then the Tantive 4 detaches, and the film cuts directly into the opening shot of A New Hope, and the circle closes. The plans that cost those soldiers their lives become the plans that R2-D2 carries to Tatooine. The story connects seamlessly, and Vader, for all his power, is one step behind. That is the irony of Vader's existence in the original trilogy. He is the most feared being in the galaxy, and he spends most of the story failing. He cannot find the rebel base. He cannot retrieve the stolen plans. He cannot prevent the destruction of the Death Star. He cannot capture his son. He cannot even carry out the Emperor's orders without complication. For all the terror he inspires, for all the officers he chokes and the soldiers he cuts down, Vader is not winning. He is maintaining. He is enforcing a status quo that is already starting to crumble. And somewhere underneath the armor, in a place he will not look at, a part of him knows it. Return of the Jedi was released on May 25, 1983, and it is, at its core, a story about one question: is Darth Vader beyond redemption? The rebellion has a military objective, the destruction of the second Death Star. Han and Leia have a ground mission on Endor. The fleet has a space battle to fight. But the heart of the film is in the Emperor's throne room, where a son faces a father and bets everything on the belief that there is still something good inside him. The film opens not with Vader but with Luke, and the contrast between where we left him and where we find him is striking. At the end of The Empire Strikes Back, Luke was broken. Physically broken, his hand gone, hanging from an antenna beneath Cloud City. Emotionally broken, his understanding of his father and his own identity shattered by Vader's revelation. But the Luke who walks into Jabba's palace on Tatooine is different. He moves with a calm that he did not possess before. He speaks with authority. He wears black, a deliberate visual echo of his father, and it is not a coincidence. Luke has returned to Tatooine to rescue Han Solo, who is frozen in carbonite and mounted like a trophy on the wall of Jabba the Hutt's palace. The rescue is elaborate, involving Leia disguised as a bounty hunter, Lando embedded in Jabba's guard, and the droids delivered as gifts. When Luke finally reveals himself and demands Han's release, Jabba refuses, and the entire group is sentenced to death at the Sarlacc pit in the Dune Sea. What follows is the first extended action sequence of the film, and it is important for one specific reason. Luke fights with a green lightsaber, a new one he built himself, and he fights with a composure that is entirely new. He is not the scrappy farm boy who stumbled through the Death Star trench run. He is not the desperate student who charged at Vader on Cloud City. He is a Jedi. The weapon moves like an extension of his body. The enemies fall, and when it is over, when Han is free, and Jabba is dead, and the sail barge is burning in the sand, Luke stands in the desert sun of Tatooine and looks out at the horizon where two suns are setting. The same two suns his father watched as a boy. The same horizon, the same desert. The story has come full circle, though Luke does not know yet just how complete that circle is. Before the final act begins, Luke returns to Dagobah. Yoda is dying, 900 years old and finally at the end. Luke asks him about Vader. Is Darth Vader my father? And Yoda, who has spent decades hiding from this truth, confirms it. Yes, your father he is. Yoda tells Luke that he must confront Vader again to complete his training. There is no other way. And then Yoda says something that changes everything. There is another Skywalker. Luke does not understand yet, but the audience does. Leia. After Yoda dies and becomes one with the Force, Obi-Wan's ghost appears and gives Luke the rest of the story. He tells Luke that Anakin was seduced by the dark side and became Vader. He tells Luke that he hid him on Tatooine to protect him, and that Leia was hidden on Alderaan for the same reason. And Luke tells Obi-Wan something that surprises the old ghost. He cannot kill his father. He senses good in Vader. He will not destroy him. That conviction, that absolute refusal to give up on the person inside the monster, is the engine of the entire third act of Return of the Jedi. Everyone else in the story has written Vader off. Obi-Wan believes Anakin is gone. Yoda agreed. The rebellion sees Vader as the enemy and nothing more. Luke is the only one who looks at Darth Vader and sees someone who can still be saved. And the only evidence he has is a feeling. A sensation through the Force that there is still conflict inside his father. Still a struggle. Still something that has not been fully extinguished. Luke Skywalker arrives at the forest moon of Endor and surrenders to the Imperial garrison. He is brought before Vader, and the two of them stand together for the first time since Cloud City. The setting is important. They are on the forest moon of Endor, surrounded by towering trees, by the sounds of insects and birds, by the organic warmth of a living world. It is as far from the sterile corridors of the Death Star or the volcanic hellscape of Mustafar as it is possible to get. Nature surrounds them, and in that natural setting, father and son have the most honest conversation they will ever have. Luke tells Vader that he knows there is still good in him. He can feel the conflict. He does not say this with the certainty of a Jedi reading the Force. He says it with the hope of a son who needs it to be true. Vader tells him that it is too late for him, that Luke does not know the power of the dark side, that the Emperor will show Luke the true nature of the Force. There is a moment in this exchange that is easy to miss. Vader looks at the lightsaber Luke has built, a new one with a green blade, and he says something almost conversational. He tells Luke that he has constructed a new lightsaber and that his skills are complete. The pride in that observation is unmistakable. Vader is looking at his son's achievement and acknowledging it with the quiet approval of a father who recognizes excellence. The Dark Lord of the Sith, the enforcer of the Empire, the man who has killed thousands, is, for one moment, just a dad. The exchange between father and son on the shuttle to the Death Star is one of the quietest and most devastating scenes in the trilogy. They are alone. The stormtroopers are gone. It is just Vader and Luke, standing in a corridor, and Luke tries one more time. He tells Vader to come with him, to leave the Empire, to let go of the dark side, and Vader says he cannot. It is too late for him. The resignation in his voice, even filtered through the vocoder of the mask, is unmistakable. This is not defiance. This is despair. Vader does not say he will not turn. He says he cannot. He believes, genuinely, that what he has done cannot be undone, that the darkness is permanent, that the person Luke is reaching for no longer exists. But there is a crack, a single fracture in the wall of denial. Luke says, "Then my father is truly dead." And Vader pauses. The pause is everything. It lasts only a moment, but in that moment, something in Vader shifts. He does not agree. He does not deny. He just stands there, breathing, processing the idea that his son is about to face the Emperor, and that whatever happens in that throne room, one of them is going to die. And some buried, suffocated fragment of Anakin Skywalker feels something about that prospect that Darth Vader has spent 2 decades trying not to feel. Luke is brought before the Emperor. Palpatine, enthroned above the Death Star's reactor, is utterly confident. He has orchestrated everything. The Rebel fleet is walking into a trap. The Death Star's weapon is fully operational. And Luke, the last hope of the Jedi, is standing right where Palpatine wants him. Palpatine's strategy is the same one he used on Anakin. Provoke the target's emotions. Exploit their attachments. Turn their love into a weapon. He shows Luke the Rebel fleet being destroyed. He tells Luke that his friends on Endor will die. He taunts him, goads him, pushes every emotional button he can find. And Luke, just like his father before him, reaches for his lightsaber. The duel between Luke and Vader in the Emperor's throne room is the emotional climax of the original trilogy, and it is structured as a mirror of everything that came before. The throne room itself is important. It is a vast, shadowed space at the summit of the Death Star, with the Emperor's throne positioned at the apex of a long staircase, overlooking a shaft that descends into the station's reactor core. The space is designed to make everyone in it feel small except Palpatine. It is a stage, and Palpatine is the director, and Luke and Vader are the players he intends to set against each other until only the strongest remains. Luke fights reluctantly at first, then with increasing desperation as Palpatine's provocations take hold. Vader senses Luke's thoughts and discovers that Luke has a sister, Leia. Vader threatens to turn Leia to the dark side, and that is the trigger that breaks Luke's restraint. Luke attacks Vader with a fury that he has never shown before. He hammers at Vader's defenses, drives him back, and finally beats him to the ground. He strikes Vader's hand and severs it at the wrist. The mechanical hand bounces across the deck, sparking, and Luke stands over his father with his lightsaber raised. And then he looks at the stump of Vader's wrist, the wires, the circuitry, the machine. He looks at his own hand, the prosthetic that replaced the one Vader cut off on Cloud City, and he sees the parallel. He is becoming his father. He is standing over a defeated enemy with a blade raised, just as Anakin stood over Dooku, and someone is telling him to kill. The Emperor is urging him to do it, to take Vader's place, to complete his journey to the dark side. Luke turns off his lightsaber and throws it away. The clatter of the weapon on the metal floor is one of the most significant sounds in the saga. It is the sound of someone choosing to be defenseless. It is the sound of someone betting their life on a principle rather than a weapon. It is the exact opposite of everything the dark side promises. The dark side says, take more power, fight harder, never stop until you have won. Luke says no, he stops. He says, I am a Jedi, like my father before me. Not like Vader, like his father. The distinction is everything. Luke is choosing to see Anakin Skywalker in the wreckage of Darth Vader. He is choosing to believe in a version of his father that has not existed for 20 years, and he is betting his life on it. Palpatine's response is simple. If Luke will not turn, he will die. The Emperor raises his hands and pours Force lightning into Luke's body. The Force lightning is important to understand because of what it represents. It is the signature weapon of the Sith, pure dark side energy channeled through the body and projected outward as destructive electrical current. Vader cannot use it. His prosthetic limbs, his mechanical life support system, would short out. The lightning would kill him as surely as it is killing Luke. Palpatine knows this. He has always known this. The suit that keeps Vader alive also keeps him from ever becoming powerful enough to challenge the Emperor. It is a leash disguised as salvation. The agony is total. Luke writhes on the floor, screaming, reaching for his father, begging for help. The lightning arcs across his body, lifting him, contorting him. His screams are not the screams of a warrior losing a battle. They are the screams of a child in pain, calling for his parent. Father, please. That word. Father. Not Vader. Not Dark Lord. Father. And Vader watches. This is the moment. This is the image we began with. The man in the mask, watching his son die, deciding whether Anakin Skywalker is still alive inside the prison of Darth Vader. Vader looks at the Emperor. He looks at Luke. He looks back at the Emperor. The mask gives you nothing. The respirator continues its rhythm. There is no dialogue. There is no inner monologue. Just a man, looking back and forth between the two poles of his existence, the master who gave him power, and the son who gave him a reason to abandon it. And then Vader moves. The movement is slow, deliberate. The servos in his suit grind. His damaged legs carry him forward one step at a time. He does not ignite a lightsaber. He does not use the Force to hurl Palpatine across the room. He uses his hands, his mechanical, prosthetic hands. He picks up Palpatine. He lifts him above his head. The physicality of this choice matters. Vader could have used the Force. He is one of the most powerful Force users who has ever lived. But he picks the Emperor up with his body, and he carries him to the edge of the reactor shaft. This is not the Force making a cosmic decision. This is a man, using his body, choosing to save his son. The act is human in the most fundamental sense of the word. It is a father placing himself between his child and harm. It is the oldest instinct in the world, and it is the one thing that 20 years of the dark side could not kill. He carries Palpatine to the edge of the reactor shaft. The Emperor's lightning courses through Vader's body, shorting out his life support, frying the circuits that keep his lungs working and his heart beating. Vader does not stop. He carries Palpatine to the edge and hurls him into the abyss. The Emperor falls, screaming, and the dark side energy that has sustained his unnatural life erupts in a shockwave that races up the shaft. Vader collapses. The lightning has destroyed his life support systems. The chest panel that regulates his breathing is sparking, flickering, failing. The steady mechanical rhythm that has defined him for 20 years becomes irregular, stuttering, each breath an effort rather than a certainty. He is dying, and he knows it, and the remarkable thing is that he does not seem afraid. Luke drags his father across the hangar bay of the Death Star, which is in chaos. The rebel fleet is attacking the station. Explosions rock the superstructure. Officers and stormtroopers run past without paying attention to the two figures struggling toward a shuttle. Luke is trying to save his father. He has come all this way, sacrificed everything, bet his life on the belief that there was still good in Vader, and now that he has been proven right, now that his father has chosen him, his father is dying. The cruelty of the timing is absolute. Anakin Skywalker returns to the light, and the light lasts only minutes before the darkness takes him for good. Luke props Vader against the ramp of an Imperial shuttle. Vader stops him. He cannot be saved. The suit is gone. The lungs are gone. Whatever was keeping him alive has been burned away by the Emperor's lightning. the same emperor he just killed. He asks Luke to take off the mask. Luke says he will die without it. And Vader says, "Nothing can stop that now. Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." Luke removes the mask. And underneath, there is a face. Not a monster's face. A man's face. Pale, scarred, bald, the features soft and damaged, the eyes clear for the first time in decades. Anakin Skywalker looks at his son, and his son looks back at him, and there is a moment of recognition so quiet and so enormous that it contains the entire saga. Anakin tells Luke he was right. There was still good in him. He asks Luke to tell his sister the same thing, and then he dies. Luke carries his father's body to the forest moon and builds a funeral pyre. The flames consume the armor, the suit, the mask, the machine. Everything that was Darth Vader burns away. And as Luke watches the fire, 3 figures appear in the distance, glowing blue, translucent, Force ghosts, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker, young and whole and smiling, looking at his son with something that might be gratitude. Sebastian Shaw played Anakin in those final unmasked moments. The face he presents is soft, almost gentle. Nothing like what you would expect from the most feared man in the galaxy. The scars are there, the damage is visible, but the eyes are kind. They are the eyes of a man who is, for the first time in decades, at peace. He is not afraid of death. He was afraid of death once, terrified of it, so terrified that he destroyed everything he loved trying to prevent it. But now, at the end, death is not the enemy. Death is the exit. It is the door that leads out of the suit, out of the pain, out of the machine he has been trapped inside for 20 years. He walks through it willingly, and on the other side, the Force is waiting. That is the end of the story of Darth Vader. Not the mask or the breathing or the atrocities or the lightsaber. A father choosing his son over his master. A man deciding at the last possible moment that love is stronger than fear. An act of sacrifice that costs him his life and saves his soul. Luke carries his father's armor aboard a stolen Imperial shuttle. He flies it down to the forest moon of Endor while the second Death Star explodes above him. A chain reaction of fire and debris that lights up the night sky like a second sun. He lands in the forest, away from the celebration, away from the Ewoks and the rebels and the fireworks. He builds a pyre from fallen wood. He places the armor on top. He lights the fire, and he stands there alone, watching the flames consume the black suit, the mask, the respirator, the machine that kept his father alive and kept him trapped. The galaxy celebrates the fall of the Empire. On Endor, on Naboo, on Coruscant, on Tatooine, on countless worlds, people dance and weep and hold each other in the streets. The Emperor is dead. The second Death Star is destroyed. The war is over, or at least this chapter of it is. And in the middle of the celebration, Luke Skywalker stands at the edge of a bonfire and watches his father's ashes rise into the sky, and he is the only person in the galaxy who is mourning. Think about what that loneliness means. Luke has won. The rebellion has won. The galaxy is free. And Luke is grieving for a man who tortured his friends, cut off his hand, stood by while his planet was destroyed, and spent 2 decades enforcing a regime built on terror. Luke grieves for him anyway, because that man was his father. Because underneath all the machinery and the darkness and the decades of cruelty, there was a 9-year-old boy on Tatooine who built a droid for his mother and dreamed of seeing every star in the galaxy. That is not the behavior of someone who has defeated a villain. That is the behavior of someone who has saved a person. And the distinction between those two things, between defeating evil and saving the person trapped inside it, is the entire moral argument of Star Wars. There is something else about Vader's final moments that requires attention. When Luke removes the mask, Anakin asks him to tell his sister that Luke was right. He does not say, "Tell Leia I am sorry." He does not say, "Tell the galaxy I repent." He says, "Tell your sister you were right. About me, that there was still good in me." He does not ask for forgiveness because he knows he does not deserve it. He does not ask for absolution because the things he has done cannot be absolved. He asks only for acknowledgement, for someone, anyone, to know that the darkness was not all there was, that Anakin Skywalker existed inside Darth Vader, even when Vader himself could not feel him, even when the galaxy had every reason to believe he was gone. That request, that final whispered plea, is the most human moment in the entire saga. It is not the request of a redeemed hero. It is the request of a dying man who wants to be remembered as something more than the worst things he did. And Luke grants it, without hesitation, without qualification. He holds his father, and he says he will save him. And Anakin tells him he already has. The funeral pyre burns. The Ewoks drum in the forests of Endor. The galaxy celebrates. And Luke stands alone, with his grief and his grace, mourning a man the galaxy will never mourn, loving a father the galaxy will never forgive. The story of Darth Vader is, when you strip away the spaceships and the lightsabers and the cosmic mythology, a story about the most basic human question there is. Can a person who has done terrible things be redeemed? Not forgiven, not excused, not retroactively justified. Redeemed. Is there a point beyond which a person cannot come back? And if so, did Anakin Skywalker cross it? The Star Wars saga does not shy away from the difficulty of this question. It does not present Vader's redemption as simple or clean or universally applicable. It presents it as specific. This man, in this moment, with this child, the circumstances are unique, the cost is absolute, and reasonable people can disagree about whether one act of self-sacrifice at the end of a lifetime of cruelty constitutes redemption or merely constitutes a single good deed performed too late to matter. The films answer that question with a yes. Yes, he crossed the line, many times. Yes, the things he did are unforgivable. The children in the temple, the Jedi he hunted, the worlds he helped destroy. No amount of last-minute sacrifice erases those acts. But the story argues that redemption is not about erasing the past. It is about choosing differently in the present. In the one moment that matters most, when everything he has left is on the line, Anakin Skywalker chooses his son over his emperor. He chooses love over fear. He chooses the light. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all redemption ever is. Not a clean slate, not a happy ending, not a guarantee that the damage is undone. Just one choice, made at the end of a long road, that proves the darkness did not win. That the boy from Tatooine, the one who built a droid for his mother, was still in there, buried under 20 years of metal and pain, waiting for someone to reach him. There is a reading of the prophecy that deserves attention here. Anakin was supposed to be the chosen one, the being who would bring balance to the Force. For years, the Jedi interpreted this as meaning that Anakin would destroy the Sith. They were right, but not in the way they imagined. Anakin did not destroy the Sith as a Jedi Knight leading an army of the light. He destroyed the Sith as a broken man in a broken suit, picking up his master and throwing him into a reactor shaft. The prophecy was fulfilled not through strength but through surrender, not through power but through love. Anakin brought balance to the Force not by choosing the light over the dark, but by choosing his son over everything, over the dark side, over the Emperor, over his own survival. The Jedi spent 1,000 years preparing for the Chosen One and imagining that the balance would come through their system, through their training, through their philosophy of detachment and control. They were wrong. The balance came through the one thing they spent 1,000 years trying to suppress: attachment, a father's love for his son. The very emotion the Jedi told Anakin was his greatest weakness turned out to be the Force's ultimate instrument. The irony is total. Luke reached him. That is the miracle. Not the Force, not the prophecy, not the lightsabers or the ghost voices or the mystical balance. A son who refused to give up on his father. A boy who looked at the most feared man in the galaxy and saw not a monster, but a person in need of saving. That is the power that brought Anakin Skywalker home. And Luke reached him because Luke made a choice that Anakin never could. He let go. In the throne room, when Palpatine urged him to kill Vader and take his place, Luke threw away his lightsaber. He stopped fighting. He accepted that he might die, that the Emperor might kill him, that his refusal to turn might cost him everything. He let go of the outcome. He let go of the need to control what happened next. He let go of the fear of loss that had consumed his father for decades. And in doing so, he became the Jedi that Anakin could not be. Not because Luke is stronger, not because Luke is wiser, because Luke had something Anakin never had. An example, a father whose fall showed him exactly what the dark side costs. Luke learned from Anakin's mistakes, even before he knew those mistakes were his father's. And that is the final, bittersweet gift of the Skywalker saga. The son is saved by the father's sacrifice, and the father is saved by the son's compassion, and neither could have happened without the other. The story of Darth Vader has been told and retold across nearly 5 decades of filmmaking, from the original 1977 film through the prequels, the animated series, the comics, the novels, and the live-action Disney Plus shows. Each new telling adds dimension. Each new perspective deepens the tragedy. The 9-year-old boy that Jake Lloyd portrayed in 1999 connects to the tormented young man that Hayden Christensen embodied in 2002 and 2005, who connects to the animated warrior that Matt Lanter voiced across 7 seasons of the Clone Wars, who connects to the monster that David Prowse inhabited and James Earl Jones gave voice to across the original trilogy. No single actor owns Darth Vader. No single story contains him. He is a collaborative creation, built across decades by hundreds of artists, and the fact that he remains coherent, that his emotional arc holds together despite being assembled from so many different pieces by so many different hands, is itself a kind of miracle. But the core is always the same: a boy who loved his mother, a man who loved his wife, a father who loved his son, and a galaxy that asked him to stop loving and broke him when he could not. George Lucas has called Star Wars a story about fathers and sons. He has spoken about mythology, about the hero's journey, about Joseph Campbell and archetypes, and the universal structures that underlie every human story. And all of that is true. Star Wars is mythological. It does operate on the level of archetype. But what makes the story of Darth Vader endure, what makes it resonate across cultures and generations and decades, is not its universality. It is its specificity. It is the specific moment when a 9-year-old boy looks back at his mother and cannot bear to leave her. It is the specific moment when a young man holds his dying mother and decides that he will never be powerless again. It is the specific moment when a father hears his son screaming and decides that nothing, not the dark side, not the Emperor, not 20 years of committed evil, matters more than stopping that pain. Those moments are not archetypes. They are human. They are the kind of moments that happen in living rooms and hospital rooms and on doorsteps and at bedsides to people who will never hold a lightsaber, who will never command a starfleet, who will never hear a prophecy about their destiny. They are the moments that make us who we are, for better and for worse. And that is why Darth Vader, a fictional character in a suit of black armor in a space opera made for children, can make a grown adult cry. Because underneath all the mythology, underneath all the spectacle, the story is about the simplest and most powerful forces in the universe: love, fear, loss, and the possibility, however slim, however late, of choosing differently. The twin sons of Tatooine rise every morning over the desert where Anakin Skywalker was born. They burn indifferently over the sand, the way they always have and always will, regardless of the wars and empires and tragedies that play out beneath them. They watched a boy leave his mother at the age of 9 and walk toward a destiny he could not imagine. They watched a man return 20 years later, encased in black armor, breathing through a machine, every trace of that boy burned away by choices and consequences and a lava river on a planet called Mustafar. They watched Luke Skywalker stare at the horizon and dream of something more, standing on the same soil where his father once dreamed the same dreams. They watched a funeral pyre burn on a forest moon, half a galaxy away, where the armor finally